Chapter 600. Ancient Taoist Lake. Ancient Taoist Lake. The great opportunity of fortune within the barren forbidden area. The opportunity of fortune within the ancient Taoist lake had finally appeared. It was a primeval Taoist source that contained Taoist patterns. Such an opportunity of fortune was enough to attract countless people to fight for it. However, the surroundings were extremely deserted. Suddenly, a steady and powerful footstep echoed on the mountain path. A handsome young man in a white robe with black hair and a gorgeous ancient sword hanging from his waist slowly approached. His eyes were like torches as he stared directly at the primeval Taoist source. It was Chu Kuangren. He looked at the primeval Taoist source and smirked. If I absorb this Taoist source, it'll be more than what I've gained in the past half a month. He looked around but did not see anyone. Come, let me see what kind of gift you've prepared for me. Chu Kuangren smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, a large number of runes suddenly appeared in the void around him and surrounded him. The light of the runes flowed, and his surroundings were shrouded by a terrifying domineering aura. Runes? It's the land of runes. Chu Kuangren recognized the runes around him at a glance. In the past, when he battled with Ziwuji using runes, he obtained a myriad rune catalog from Ziwuji. There were many runes recorded on it, and he had studied them before, so he had mastered all of them. He knew all of these runes. Boom, boom, boom. Runes appeared all over the sky, and all kinds of energy fluctuations erupted. Flames, frost, wind blades, and rain all swept towards Chu Kuangren. The power was so great that the entire 10,000-meter-tall mountain shook. However, Chu Kuangren did not move an inch from his original spot. Instead, he activated his mind power, and the surrounding spiritual qi rushed towards him like 100 rivers returning to the sea. The spiritual qi gathered around him and turned into a gigantic silver rune that enveloped the entire mountaintop. Destruction Rune. As soon as the destruction rune appeared, a powerful shockwave instantly erupted. The mysterious power of the runes disintegrated all the runes in the void with an unstoppable momentum. On the distant mountain peak, Ziwuji's pupils shrank. It's this rune again. It's this mysterious rune again. Chu Kuangren's destruction rune was too much of a threat to a rune master. It was not even weaker than his purple rune demonic eyes. These two were the mysterious powers of runes. Damn it! With the mysterious power of these runes, my runes are practically useless against him. Ziwuji said gloomily. Outside of the ancient Tao lakes, in the instant that the runes in the sky shattered, powerful ripples of energy erupted from the nearby mountain peaks. Chu Kuangren swept his gaze across the area and noticed that there were dozens of unusual giant stone pillars protruding from the ancient path lake. Every stone pillar had a person standing on it, and the positions of the stone pillars were very strange, containing the mysteries of the 5 elements and 8 trigrams. After the runes is the formation? Chu Kuangren said indifferently. His interest was piqued. I want to see how far you can go to fight against me. He took a step forward and wanted to collect the primeval Tao source first. But at this moment, the surrounding stone pillars suddenly shook. An incomparably majestic surge of earth qi shot up into the sky and circulated in the void before it turned into 64 giant light pillars. They landed around Chu Kuangren and formed an indestructible cage, trapping him within. Haha, Chu Kuangren. What do you think of my underground prison formation that uses earth qi as the pillar and the mountain river momentum as the prison? A loud laugh came from one of the stone pillars. The person who laughed was the forbidden sky pride of the Thousand Array sect, Formation Taoist. He had a smug expression on his face. This underground prison formation was something that he had spent a long time setting up. He was confident that even an Emperor Realm cultivator might not be able to break it. Just as Formation Taoist finished speaking, the clouds suddenly began to rumble. Dark clouds gathered and thunder rumbled. The thunder was accompanied by alternating black and white lights, and a surge of surging yin-yang spiritual power erupted. Amidst the dark clouds, a young man in a black and white Taoist robe stared coldly at Chu Kuangren, who was trapped in the underground prison formation. Chu Kuangren, I'm the current forbidden Yunluozi of the yin-yang sect. Let me show you the power of the yin-yang dual lightning. With a cold roar, bolts of black and white lightning struck down from the sky. They penetrated the underground prison formation and locked onto Chu Kuangren. The black lightning was vicious. while the white lightning was fierce and domineering. The two types of lightning struck continuously, cutting off Chu Kuangren's escape route. Chu Kuangren's gaze was indifferent as he stood still. Countless bolts of lightning struck him, but they were all deflected by his sword fingers. The lightning energy continued to explode and crash against the underground prison formation. Although it was easy to enter the formation, it was extremely difficult to break it from the inside. Under the impact of the massive lightning energy, the formation did not suffer even the slightest damage. Suddenly, an angry roar came from the clouds. The lightning energy around Yun Luozi continued to gather towards him. The yang and yin lightning danced wildly on his body, and his entire body was shrouded in lightning. It was as if he was a deity that controlled lightning. Yin and yang fusion. Heaven-piercing thunder divine sword. Yun Luozi let out a long roar as the yin and yang lightning energies merged within his body. Finally, it erupted from his palm and turned into a terrifying gray sword shadow that descended from the sky. That was Yun Luozi's strongest technique. It was an extremely terrifying technique. Even the forbidden sky prides were extremely afraid of it. For divine symbol's primordial sword, an indifferent voice resounded. Chu Kuangren lifted his arm and gathered the power of earth, wind, water, and fire into a four-colored sword ray that shot into the sky. The four divine symbols' primordial sword clashed against the sky-piercing thunder divine sword. Two terrifying forces suddenly exploded. However, the moment the gray sword shadow came into contact with the four divine symbols' primordial sword, it crumbled. The power of the four divine symbols overpowered the heavenly lightning. The domineering aura of the four divine symbols' primordial sword locked onto Yun Luozi, causing his face to turn pale with fear. How is this possible? Yun Luozi could not believe that his strongest technique was broken by his opponent with just a lift of his hand. Accompanied by a loud explosion, the four divine symbols' primordial sword did not land on Yun Luozi. Instead, it landed on the underground prison formation. The formation, which used the earth chi as its pillar and the mountain and river's momentum as its prison, instantly trembled violently. One by one, the pillars of light exploded. Amidst the explosions of the earth chi pillars, the underground prison formation was broken. The impact of the collision between the four divine symbols' primordial sword and the earth chi spread outwards. Yun Luozi, who was closest to it, was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. Even though he tried his best to defend himself, he was still instantly sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot, and several of his bones were broken. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the sun once again shone on the ancient Taoist lake. Chu Kuangren stood with his hands behind his back and an indifferent expression on his face. Runes, formations, yin and yang lightning energies. What can they do to me? Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren and gulped down their saliva. The Taoist was especially shocked. I spent a lot of effort to set up this earth chi grand formation, but it was broken by a single sword attack from him. I can't believe this B***starred strength is so strong. What one hears may be false, but seeing is believing. All this while, the Taoist had only heard about Chu Kuangren's strength from others. Now he had finally seen it with his own eyes. Chu Kuangren's strength was far beyond his imagination. Chapter 601. Chu Kuangren broke through the yin-yang lightning and the underground prison formation with a single sword strike. Then, he slowly stepped out and continued to walk towards the primeval Taoist origin. Seeing that, the Taoist master yelled, "Activate the killing formation!" Apart from the underground prison formation, the Taoist master had also prepared a killing formation, and that killing formation was the strongest technique he had prepared. The Taoist master then took out a formation board and tossed it into the air. The people standing on the stone pillars suddenly let out a low growl and unleashed surges of spiritual power attacks. However, they were not attacking Chu Kuangren, but the formation board in the air. The surges of spiritual power merged into the formation board and formed a huge spiritual vortex. A terrifying energy fluctuation instantly spread, shaking everything within a 10,000-kilometer radius. Oh, so this formation can merge your powers together? Looks like this is going to be interesting. Chu Kuangren smirked. Attack! The Taoist master yelled, and the formation board suddenly unleashed a terrifying spiritual light beam that shot towards Chu Kuangren. With a clang, the descendant self-sword was unsheathed. A sword ray slashed towards the light beam, and the collision of the two energies caused the entire ancient Taoist lake to roll wildly. Everyone, activate the Divine Soul Eradication Formation, the Taoist master yelled. Everyone yelled in unison as surges of spiritual power surged into the formation board above the ancient Taoist lake. Mysterious light patterns flowed on the formation board, and a huge golden light beam shot out towards Chu Kuangren. The power of that attack was extremely terrifying as it combined the power of hundreds and thousands of sky prides. Wherever the light beam went, the void collapsed and shattered. It was a terrifying sight. Faced with such power, Chu Kuangren finally revealed a serious expression for the first time. I'll show you what true power is. The spiritual power within Chu Kuangren's body surged, and the power of the three great Taoist physiques instantly merged together, forming a huge divine ferocious avatar. The divine ferocious avatar roared and unleashed a punch, colliding with the huge spiritual light beam. In an instant, the mountain peak caved in. The energy impact was like a tidal wave, wave after wave. The surrounding clouds tumbled and retreated, forming a clear sky. The spiritual light beam and the divine ferocious avatar were still fighting against each other, when a majestic Taoist rhyme appeared on Chu Kuangren's body. Heavenly Punishment Taoist Rhyme. The moment the Heavenly Punishment Taoist Rhyme appeared, the majestic heavenly might shocked everyone present, causing all the sky prides present to feel their scalps go numb. With the support of the Heavenly Punishment Taoist Rhyme, the power of the heavenly ferocious Dharma idol multiplied once again. The terrifying Dharma power that erupted from the Dharma idol's fist almost shattered the light pillar and completely knocked down the array disc in the air. Not good, I need to increase my strength. Taoist formation's expression changed and his heart skipped a beat. He was able to fight against all the elites by himself. In fact, it was even better than that. This kind of power made him feel terrified. If it were not for the presence of so many sky prides, he would not have dared to face Chu Kuangren alone no matter how intricate his formation was. This person's battle prowess had already reached an unimaginable level. Red Dragon Phoenix Saber. On a stone pillar not far away, Bai Hongyu took out her monarch weapon. With the help of the sovereign weapon, her spiritual power increased once again. As for the others, they also used all kinds of methods to increase their spiritual energy. Some used quasi-emperor weapons, some used elixirs, and some used secret techniques. More and more spiritual power was channeled into the array disc, causing the spiritual light pillar to become even more dazzling. The terrifying power caused the divine ferocious avatar's spiritual power to fluctuate violently. The power of the three great Taoist physiques began to show signs of collapsing, and the entire avatar took a few steps back. The Sky Pride's eyes lit up when they saw that. We have a chance. We can win. We can win. Taoist formation Wang Quan by Hongyu, and the others were overjoyed. Further away on a mountain peak, Nangong Huang, Murong Xian, and the others were watching the battle on the ancient Taoist lake. When they saw that Chu Kuangren's avatar was on the verge of collapsing, their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. Oh no, the sect leader seems to be at a disadvantage. F***CKme. These guys are really putting in a lot of effort to deal with the sect leader. I can't believe they've prepared such a formation. We can't let this go on. Murong Xian, let's go and help, Shang Qingxue said, feeling a little restless. At that moment, Lan Yu stood in front of them and said, Master has said that all of you can only watch and not do anything. Beside her, Red Moon could not help but frown. Brother Chu, you're in danger now, yet you're still so calm. Aren't you worried? Even Lung Ningyu, who usually did not show her emotions, was a little restless. Lan Yu, on the other hand, was very calm from the beginning. Danger? Lan Yu sneered. These mobs are not strong enough to put my master in danger. She had been with Chu Kuangren for the longest time. She had been with him since the beginning of his cultivation journey. Along the way, she had seen Chu Kuangren overcome too many dangerous and desperate situations that no one else could. Now, this scene was not even a difficult situation for Chu Kuangren. On the ancient Taoist lake, Chu Kuangren's divine ferocious avatar seemed like it could not hold on much longer. However, he did not panic at all. In fact, he even smiled. Is this your limit? If that's all you've got, it's far from enough to fight me. As soon as he said that, Chu Kuangren took a step forward and a surge of domineering aura instantly erupted. The 7 supreme foundation levels in his body shone brightly, and the Emperor's Qi in his spiritual mound gushed out and entered the divine ferocious avatar. Emperor's Qi, the power of an emperor. Even if it was just one strand of it, it instantly multiplied the divine ferocious avatar's power after it was integrated into the divine ferocious avatar, unleashing a surge of Emperor's Qi. With a roar, the divine ferocious avatar's fist energy exploded once again. The power of the 3 supreme Taoist physiques combined with the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme, and the power of the Emperor's Qi instantly shattered the spiritual power light pillar and smashed onto the formation board in midair. Accompanied by a deafening explosion, the formation board shattered on the spot. Meanwhile, the Sky Prides who had continuously channeled their spiritual power into the formation board suffered a backlash. Their spiritual power flowed backward, instantly injuring them. Even someone as strong as Wang Quan and Bai Hongyu, who was a forbidden existence, could not help but vomit blood on the spot. As for the slightly weaker ones, their bones and flesh were completely shattered, exploding into a blood mist on the spot. In an instant, streaks of blood mist bloomed like flowers on the dozens of stone pillars, exploding one after another. Thousands of Sky Prides were either dead or injured. It was a complete mess. Chu Kuangren stood where he was, his white robe still spotless. Behind him, the divine ferocious avatar stood proudly, emanating an endless domineering aura. The survivors looked at the person in front of them in horror. Emperor's Qi. He has cultivated a surge of Emperor's Qi. D***, a surge of Emperor's Qi. He has cultivated a surge of Emperor's Qi before becoming an emperor. This person's combat strength is too terrifying. He's too strong. We've lost this battle again. Wang Quan, Bai Hongyu, and the other forbidden Sky Prides were in complete despair. Thousands of Sky Prides working together could not defeat Chu Kuangren. No, they could not even hurt him. The gap between them was just too big. At that moment, the Sky Pride's Taoist core was almost shattered by Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren's name would become a psychological scar that would follow them for the rest of their lives. You're too weak. Even if you gather all your strength, you're still vulnerable to me. Chu Kuangren said calmly. In the distance, Lung Ningyu, Red Moon, and the others were shocked. Thousands of Sky Prides were defeated by a single person, and now they were being mocked by him. At that thought, the few of them looked at the remaining Sky Prides with pity in their eyes. Chapter 602. 1,000 people against one person. 1,000 people were defeated. The problem was that these 1,000 people were all Sky Prides from the major forces, and many of them were even forbidden Sky Prides. Yet they still lost miserably. Not only did they lose, but they lost so badly that they could not even show their faces. After Chu Kuangren mocked them, he did not even look at the crowd as he walked towards the primordial Taoist origin. Just as he was about to keep the Taoist origin, a majestic palm tree suddenly came from a distant mountain peak. That palm tree was like a torrent that contained earth-shattering power. Before it even landed, the entire ancient Taoist lake's surface had already sunk. Oh, interesting. Chu Kuangren's eyes flashed as he pointed his sword finger and unleashed a sword ray. The sword ray collided with the palm tree, causing the entire ancient Taoist lake's lake water to tumble violently. Under that extremely powerful force, the lake was almost split into two. The lake water rumbled and rumbled. That primordial Taoist origin is mine. An indifferent voice was heard. The crowd looked towards the source of the voice and saw a purple-robed figure standing on a mountain peak. It was a young cultivator with a tough face and a disdainful gaze. Every move he made was filled with an extraordinary aura. Vaguely, the crowd seemed to see an emperor who looked down on the world and the 9 firmaments. They could not help but want to submit to him. Chu Kuangren saw that person too. Without using the Eye of Revelation, he instantly knew who that person was. The reincarnation of a great emperor, Qin Tianqian. Chu Kuangren smirked. Finally, a worthy opponent. However, you're dreaming if you think you can take the primordial Taoist origin. As soon as he said that, Chu Kuangren's figure instantly disappeared from where he was and appeared in front of the primordial Taoist origin. He raised his hand and grabbed it. Qin Tianqian, who was on the mountain peak, also made his move. Great Luo Frost Palm. With a low growl, Qin Tianqian raised his hand and gathered his spiritual power in Taoist rhymes. A majestic surge of chilling qi instantly erupted. The entire ancient Taoist lake was instantly frozen, and everything within a 1,000-mile radius was turned into a world of ice and snow. Chilling winds howled across the land. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren's four symbols power surged in his palm and formed a four-symbol sword shadow that slashed towards the palm qi. Under the extreme impact of the power, the frozen ancient path lake instantly exploded, and countless ice crystal fragments scattered like a storm. The ground around the Dao Lake cracked open, and the entire mountain peak was shattered into several halves by the force of the collision. Those two monsters! A great land of opportunity was destroyed by the two of them just like that. It'll take at least a few thousand years for the ancient Dao Lakes to recover. Too terrifying. The prodigy's expressions changed drastically as they frantically retreated. After the collision, when the dust settled, two figures could be seen standing on a piece of floating ice, facing each other from afar. One of them was holding a white sphere of light the size of a baby. This was none other than the primordial Dao essence that had been born from the ancient Dao Lake. You are indeed extraordinary. Qin Tianqian glanced at the primordial Taoist essence in Chu Kuangren's hand and stared straight into his opponent's eyes with a serious look on his face. Although it was only one move, he had suffered a small loss just now. The primordial Taoist essence had fallen into Chu Kuangren's hands. You're just average, Chu Kuangren said calmly. With his eye of revelation activated, he had already seen through all of Qin Tianqian's information. It was just as the rumors said. He was indeed the reincarnation of a great emperor. Unfortunately, he did not see any possibility that his opponent could defeat him. Although Chu Kuangren was interested in him, however, he was only concerned about it and not too serious. Ever since I've awakened my past life's memories, no sky pride in this world has caught my attention. Even the likes of Jian Daozi and Wang Quan could not last more than 3 moves against me. I'm very curious to see how far you can go. Qin Tianqian stood with his hands behind his back. His aura continued to rise, and an overbearing Taoist rhyme continued to spread. He was the reincarnation of a great emperor, so his understanding of Tao had long surpassed those boundary emperors. It was only because of his realm and the influence of the heavenly Tao that he could not unleash his full potential. Even so, he was still far stronger than the forbidden sky prides. Anyone can talk big. Chu Kuangren placed the primordial Taoist essence into his yin and yang ring. Similarly, a surge of surging Taoist rhyme poured out from his body, fighting against Qin Tianqian's Taoist Tao. Oh, your Tao has reached such a level. Qin Tianqian was a little surprised. Then, he raised his hand and gathered his spiritual power. Within his spiritual power, a terrifying domineering aura could be vaguely sensed. He had also condensed a surge of Emperor's Qi. Grand Inferno Fist. Qin Tianqian unleashed a punch, and a domineering and scorching fist energy instantly melted the surrounding ice floes. The fist energy locked onto Chu Kuangren, making it impossible for him to escape. However, Chu Kuangren did not intend to evade it. He unsheathed his descendant self-sword and activated the heaven-slaying sword-drawing technique. The dazzling sword ray immediately tore through the fist energy and headed towards Qin Tianqian. What? Qin Tianqian's expression changed. He raised his hand and unleashed another punch. After the fist and sword collided, he was pushed back a few feet. His eyes were filled with seriousness. I can't believe someone among the sky prides of this generation has condensed an emperor's qi. There are many more that you can't imagine. Chu Kuangren's 3 Taoist physiques instantly erupted and merged into the divine ferocious avatar. With the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme and emperor's qi, the avatar's domineering aura shook the heavens and the earth. Qin Tianqian was shocked when he saw the Dharma form. A Taoist physique fusion technique? And this heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme and emperor's qi? D***. I can't believe there's such a monster in this generation. Qin Tianqian was shocked. He initially thought that as the reincarnation of a great emperor, coupled with his various opportunities of fortune, he was already the most terrifying sky pride in this world. However, he did not expect there to be another Chu Kuangren. Moreover, just the fusion of his 3 supreme Taoist physiques was enough to overshadow 99% of the sky prides in this world. Not to mention the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme and emperor's qi. That power was too terrifying. Reincarnation of a great emperor, do your best to survive. Chu Kuangren said calmly. The divine ferocious avatar behind him had already unleashed a punch, and its majestic power locked onto Qin Tianchen. Empyrean Gauntlet. A golden gauntlet suddenly appeared on Qin Tianchen's right hand, and an extremely mysterious Taoist rhyme circulated on it. He unleashed a punch that collided with the divine ferocious avatar's fist. The entire ancient Taoist lake exploded, and a torrent of water gushed into the sky. The terrifying power dissipated, and the surrounding sky prides who were already suffering from the spiritual power backlash could not dodge in time. Many of them died on the spot. Less than 10% of the thousands of sky prides were left. They had paid a huge price to fight against Chu Kuangren. However, it was almost useless. I can't believe I have to use my emperor weapon just to deal with a sky pride. Qin Tianchen gritted his teeth and said after blocking the divine ferocious avatar's punch. As the reincarnation of a great emperor, Qin Tianchen was extremely arrogant. There was not a single sky pride in this world that he would take seriously. However, in order to deal with Chu Kuangren, he had to give it his all. He had even used his rarely used emperor weapon. This person is the biggest obstacle on my path to becoming an emperor. I must not let him live. Qin Tianchen thought to himself. Murderous intent shot out from his eyes as he channeled his emperor's qi into the gauntlet in his hand. In an instant, a terrifying power erupted from the golden gauntlet. The surging Taoist rhyme on it almost materialized, and faint Taoist patterns could be seen. The emperor's qi was infused into the emperor weapon. This was much more terrifying than other cultivators who used their spiritual power to activate the emperor weapon. Chapter 603. Once the emperor's qi entered the emperor weapon, Qin Tianchen's aura instantly skyrocketed. He glared at Chu Kuangren coldly and said, Chu Kuangren, I know you have an emperor weapon with you too. Show it to me. You're not strong enough for me to use my emperor weapon. Chu Kuangren said calmly as the divine ferocious avatar behind him unleashed another punch. Arrogant. Qin Tianchen yelled and unleashed another punch. The emperor weapon's power was as vast as the ocean under the influence of the emperor's qi. With just one punch, the divine ferocious avatar was forced to take 2 steps back. Again, 9 heavenly attacks. Qin Tianchen activated his strongest emperor technique. It was an emperor technique that he created in his past life, and it was very compatible with his Tao. Coupled with the power of the emperor weapon and emperor's qi, the explosion of power was so terrifying that it felt like the entire realm was about to collapse. The first punch caused a violent gust of wind to howl. The divine ferocious avatar was forced to retreat again. The second punch caused the mountains and rivers to collapse. The third punch caused the weather to change. Qin Tianchen continued to unleash one punch after another, each stronger than the last. By the 7th punch, Chu Kuangren's divine ferocious avatar was already riddled with cracks. It looked like it would crumble at any time. The 8th punch caused the divine ferocious avatar's spiritual power Taoist rhyme to explode, and its terrifying power poured out. Qin Tianchen stood proudly. Chu Kuangren, you've lost. The surrounding sky prides could not help but feel excited when they saw that. The Qin family's sky prides especially could not help but look at Chu Kuangren passionately. Qin Tianchen has won. The reincarnation of a great emperor is indeed extraordinary. Aha, this is great. Finally, I vented my anger. Chu Kuangren is not invincible after all. The sky prides had been defeated too badly by Chu Kuangren. The past few days had been too frustrating for them. Now that they saw Chu Kuangren being defeated, they could not help but feel exhilarated. It felt so good that their souls were about to fly. You didn't even hurt a single hair on me. What makes you think you've won? Chu Kuangren sneered. Oh, you're still trying to act tough? I'll make you admit defeat then. Qin Tianchen once again activated his emperor weapon, divine deity gloves. Then he took a step forward and launched a punch towards Chu Kuangren's chest. At that moment, Chu Kuangren made his move. This time he did not use his avatar or his sword. Instead, he threw a punch at Qin Tianchen. This scene caused everyone to be unable to help but feel shocked. The weapon in Qin Tianchen's hand was a monarch weapon. Coupled with his emperor's qi, its power was unimaginable. Even Chu Kuangren's Dharma idol could not block it, yet he was trying to block it with his fist. Did this guy have a death wish? Almost everyone thought that Chu Kuangren would be blasted away by that punch in the next second. His blood would splatter everywhere. As a matter of fact, when the two fists collided, a terrifying explosion sounded and one of them was indeed sent flying. However, that person was Qin Tianchen. Chu Kuangren was still in his punching stance, and there was an extremely terrifying aura circulating around his body. An extremely terrifying Taoist rhyme erupted from his body. This Taoist rhyme circled around his body and almost condensed into mysterious Taoist patterns. "Come, let me show you my invincible technique," Chu Kuangren said indifferently. He took a step forward, and the Taoist rhyme on his body poured out in an even more violent manner, causing the entire Taoist lake to boil. What a mysterious aura! How is this possible? You have a mysterious technique on you. Qin Tianchen could not stay calm anymore. He was blasted to the shore by Chu Kuangren and looked at his opponent in shock. Mysterious. That was the ultimate emperor technique. It was a perfect demonstration of one's own Tao. Every type of mysterious was created by an emperor himself. It was a cultivation technique that belonged solely to the emperor, and it was impossible for it to be leaked to outsiders. In other words, Chu Kuangren's mysterious technique was a cultivation technique that he created based on his own Tao. It was a unique technique that belonged to him alone. So the mysterious aura that spread earlier was your doing. Qin Tianchen recalled the mysterious aura that he had sensed earlier. Mysterious, huh? Chu Kuangren murmured. So this cultivation technique that's even more powerful than emperor techniques is called mysterious. I get it now. He had always thought that his invincible technique was superior to most emperor techniques. It turned out that this technique was called mysterious. This mysterious technique of mine is still in its infancy. Today I'll use you, the reincarnation of a great emperor, to test its power, Chu Kuangren said. 9 heavenly strikes. Qin Tianchen did not dare to be careless, so he attacked first. The 9 heavenly strikes were unleashed to the maximum. Fist after fist was unleashed, and by the 9th punch, the power of the previous 8 punches seemed to have stacked together. When the 9 punches merged into one, its power shook the entire realm. However, Chu Kuangren's expression did not change. He simply unleashed a punch. Invincible technique. Heaven's vortex. A dense Taoist rhyme circulated around Chu Kuangren's fist, and it seemed to have turned into a giant vortex that could devour the heavens and earth. Qin Tianchen's emperor technique landed on that vortex, but it was easily disintegrated and neutralized. It could not hurt Chu Kuangren at all. Then from that vortex, a terrifying and overbearing power gushed out and blasted Qin Tianchen away again. This time it made him vomit blood. D****. Qin Tianchen took out a large bottle of medicinal pills and gulped them down. Then the aura on his body began to skyrocket. 9 Polaris Dragons devastation. Qin Tianchen roared and once again activated his emperor technique. When he unleashed a punch, 9 surges of spiritual power mixed with emperor's qi erupted and stacked together in the void, forming a giant golden dragon that danced in the air. Invincible technique. Universal reversal. When Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, a terrifying surge of energy erupted. In the void, 2 colors alternated between black and white. It was a horrifying phenomenon where the sun and moon were inverted, and the stars were falling. A terrifying energy that seemed to be able to destroy everything spread out, and the entire ancient Taoist lake was destroyed in an instant. The giant golden dragon that danced in the air was not even worth mentioning in the face of this technique. It turned into golden light spots and dissipated on the spot. Qin Tianchen, on the other hand, could not help but fly backward and spit out a mouthful of blood. Chu Kuangren's self-created invincible technique was divided into 2 styles. The heaven's vortex was an ultimate defense that could dissipate energy and deflect a portion of it. The cosmos reversal was an ultimate attack. It was a fusion of the many offensive techniques that Chu Kuangren had learned, and it pursued the ultimate destruction. That surge of energy seemed to be able to overturn the sun and moon and shatter the cosmos. The surrounding sky prides were shocked. What did they just see? Qin Tianchen, who was known as the reincarnation of an emperor, could not even fight back against Chu Kuangren. He was the most dazzling sky pride in the emperor's path. Yet, Chu Kuangren had easily defeated him. Run! Qin Tianchen, who was severely injured, did not hesitate to activate a secret technique. The emperor's qi in his body began to burn wildly, turning into an enormous surge of energy that filled his body. 9 Polaris Dragons Devastation. Qin Tianchen unleashed another punch. That was a power that he activated by burning his emperor's qi through a secret technique, so it was much more terrifying than before. However, Chu Kuangren calmly raised his hand again, and the heaven's vortex reappeared to deflect that surge of energy. During that process, Qin Tianchen had already taken out a great shift talisman and crushed it, instantly disappearing on the spot. The deflected punch missed its target and landed on a few stone pillars not far away. With a loud explosion, the stone pillars were reduced to countless pieces of rubble. Chapter 604. The reincarnation of an emperor sure is fast. Chu Kuangren sneered. The Taoist rime on his body gradually retracted as he glanced at the remaining sky prides. Less than 10% of the original 1,000 sky prides were left. If you want to live, leave your yin and yang ring behind. Otherwise you'll die. The word die was like a gust of cold wind that swept across. All the sky prides could not help but shiver. They knew that Chu Kuangren was not joking with them. If they did not hand over their resources in exchange for their lives, they would really die. Chu Kuangren, this emperor weapon is yours. Bai Hongyu dropped the emperor weapon in her hand. That was the Scarlet Dragon Phoenix sword, the greatest opportunity of fortune that she had obtained in the barren forbidden area. However, she could only use it to exchange for her life now. The Scarlet Dragon Phoenix sword was stabbed into the ground and trembled as if it was protesting. Didn't you say you would make me famous? Why didn't you keep your promise? Bitch. Bai Hongyu could not do anything about it. After dropping the emperor weapon, she turned into a stream of light and flew into the distance. The other sky prides gritted their teeth and handed over their resources as well. As for those who wanted to take advantage of the situation, they were all killed by Chu Kuangren. Soon, the remaining sky prides either tried to leave or tried to resist Chu Kuangren, but they were all killed by him. All that was left was a ground full of resources and treasures. Chu Kuangren called Murong Xian and the others over to clean up the battlefield. The few of them then happily went to pick up the treasures. At this point, no one in the barren forbidden area could compare to Chu Kuangren anymore. The great opportunities of fortune in the forbidden area had also been swept clean by Chu Kuangren. As for the core area of the forbidden area, there were still many seals that had not been broken, so the sky prides could not go in and explore. Chu Kuangren did not want to go in for the time being. He had already gained a lot from this trip. The ancient cave of treasures, the 8 remoteness dragon mountain, the ancient path lake, and the other great opportunities of fortune were enough to increase his strength. Now, the most important thing was to find a place to digest these opportunities of fortune. He led the group out of the forbidden area for the time being. After he left, the other sky prides continued to explore the forbidden area. Some of them were so excited that they almost jumped up in joy. Great, the devil has finally left. Haha, this is great. Now there is no one to compete with us for the opportunity. I must make good use of this opportunity. Boo-hoo, even the heavens pity him. He's finally gone. All the prodigies were extremely excited, as if they were celebrating the new year. But after a while they felt depressed. Chu Kuangren may have left, but during his time here, he had taken away most of the opportunities of fortune in the forbidden barren area. There were too few fortuitous opportunities left. The sky prides were fighting for the treasures, but their gains were very little. Compared to Chu Kuangren's gains, their gains were almost negligible. At that thought, everyone could not help but grit their teeth at Chu Kuangren. Apart from the elites, the orthodoxies and forces behind those sky prides were just as eager to skin Chu Kuangren alive and eat him alive. This was especially true for the sword race, the demon race, and the dark god sect. One had to know that their forbidden prodigies were dead. The taboo was an important means for them to fight for the throne of this world. Now that the taboo was dead, they no longer had any talented geniuses to compete for the throne. This hatred was too great. Within the sword race, the swordsman clan leader's expression was extremely gloomy. He had already learned about what happened in the Forbidden Barren area. Jian Chongfeng, I can't believe that the mystic sword guards would betray the swordsman. Taoist is dead. Below the swordsman clan leader, the elders of the swordsman clan dared not say a word. They were afraid that they would offend the swordsman. After a long while, the swordsman clan leader gradually calmed down. Did you find the heavenly part in order during your trip to the Forbidden Barren area? Yes, clan leader. A young man walked out. He took out a colorful token. It was the heavenly part in order that the swordsman clan leader had been longing for. With this token, the emperor of the swordsman clan could be freed from the shackles of the emperor's path. As long as the emperor of the swordsman clan appears, Chu Kuangren, you shall die. The swordsman clan leader took the heavenly part in order with a cold gaze. He glanced at the young man before him and said, Jian Yunyang, the swordsman clan leader has lost many talents. You're only second to Jian Daoist, the sky pride of the mystic sword guards. Now that you've brought back the heavenly part in order, you shall be the new Taoist of the swordsman clan. The resources of the swordsman clan shall be yours. The swordsman clan needed to nurture another sky pride as soon as possible. They did not want to give up on the fight for the throne just like that. Jian Yunyang immediately knelt on the ground. I shall not disappoint you. Jian Yunyang. In other words, an obscure light flashed across Jian Chongfeng's eyes. He was not the one who obtained the heavenly part in order. Instead, it was given to him by Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren wanted Chu Kuangren to contribute to the swordsman tribe, so that the swordsman tribe leader would value him. As for which emperor of the swordsman clan would be released from the heavenly part in order, Chu Kuangren never cared about it. He was too powerful now. He was unrivaled among the sky prides of the emperor's path. Even if an emperor were to come personally, he would not be much of a threat to him. Besides the swordsman clan, the other orthodoxies had also found the heavenly part in order in the Forbidden Barren area. At that point, all the orthodoxies fell into a brief silence. However, everyone knew that the emperors who were hiding in the ancestral lands of the orthodoxies were about to make their appearance. Without any shackles, they would be the strongest combat power in the emperor's path. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren was in an unknown mountain range. He had set up layers of restrictions as he planned to go into closed-door meditation to refine his harvest. Besides him, Nangong Huang and the others also needed to go into closed-door meditation for some time. Meanwhile, Lung Ningyu and Red Moon had already returned to the Seven Emotions sect. In the mountain range, inside a cave that was filled with restrictions, a white-robed young man was sitting cross-legged in the cave. In front of him was a golden skeleton that emanated waves of emperor's poise. That was the emperor's body. However, the emperor's body was incomplete as it was missing 5 finger bones. That was the Azure Sword Emperor's body. As for the finger bones, they had been absorbed and refined by Jian Daozi. The reason why Jian Daozi was able to ascend to the level of a top-tier boundary emperor was all because of those finger bones. The energy contained in this emperor's body is indeed massive. However, why do I feel like it's far inferior to this head? Chu Kuangren suddenly took out a woman's head. It was an emperor's head that he had obtained a long time ago. However, there was a sealing talisman on it. Besides that, Chu Kuangren also noticed that the empress's head contained more energy than the entire emperor's body. It seems like there are differences between emperors. The empress is definitely much stronger than the Azure Xian Sword Emperor. Perhaps the Azure Sword Emperor has been dead for too long, and this emperor's body has lost too much of its energy. Chu Kuangren murmured. He kept the empress's head away. He still did not dare to remove the sealing talisman. The higher his cultivation level, the more he could sense how terrifying the energy contained in that head was. Let's refine the Azure Sword Emperor's body first. Chu Kuangren murmured. Chu Kuangren was many times stronger than Jian Daozi, so he refined the Sword Emperor's body much faster than Jian Daozi. With the help of the Universal Cauldron Physique, it took him less than 2 days to completely refine it. Meanwhile, the spiritual power within his body had increased to an unprecedented level. The amount of Emperor's essence in his spiritual mound had increased from 1 to 3. After the 3 Emperor's essences the size of a baby's thumb circulated a few times in his body, it actually strengthened his physical body a little. Next, it's time to refine this primeval Taoist essence. Chapter 605. The primordial Taoist essence could be said to be Chu Kuangren's biggest gain in the Forbidden Barren Land. Aside from strengthening his spiritual power, this lump of primordial Taoist essence was also a great help to his physical body and Taoist insights. After refining the Sword Emperor's body, he set his sights on the Tao source. He activated the Heaven and Earth Cauldron physique and instantly absorbed it into his body. The time required to refine the primordial Tao source was even longer than refining the Sword Emperor's body. It took him 3 to 4 days to completely refine it. This was also him. If it were anyone else, even a martial emperor, they wouldn't be able to do it without 3 or 4 years. After refining the primordial Taoist origin, Chu Kuangren's strength skyrocketed once again. The number of emperor's essences in his body increased from 3 to 6. Not only that, but with the help of the primeval Tao source, his comprehension of his own Tao was very close to the extreme level. His art of invincibility was also more complete, and he had completely entered the esoteric level. In terms of his physical body, he already had the body of a supreme saint. Under the nourishment of the sixth emperor Qi and the primeval Tao source, he had grown a lot stronger. From the outside, it was hard to tell that he still had that slender appearance. His blood, bones, and even every single muscle fiber had been dyed with a faint layer of golden light, as if they were made of golden jade. There was even a faint emperor's aura within them. His body was already gradually transforming into an emperor body. Even if I don't use my cultivation, I can probably kill a peak quasi-emperor with just this body, Chu Kuangren muttered. If he added the 6 emperor's qi, the invincible technique, and the emperor's weapon, who could compete with him in the entire emperor's road? Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. Becoming a martial emperor. His only goal now was to become an emperor. As for the others, he no longer cared about them. There are still some fortuitous encounters. I might as well refine them all together. Chu Kuangren took out some suitable supreme elixirs and other opportunities of fortune. After some refinement, there was another stream of emperor qi in his body. This trip to the desolate Forbidden Land was full of gains. 7 emperor energies. I heard that those below the emperor realm can only form 9 emperor energies at most. I have 7 now. I think even those emperor realm experts with deep foundations can't reach my level. With a satisfied smile, Chu Kuangren stood up and exited his meditation. Zhang Xian opened the seal and walked out of the cave. Under the big tree outside the cave, there was a beautiful figure standing gracefully. It was Lan Yu. Her eyes lit up when she saw Chu Kuangren coming out of his closed-door meditation. She quickly walked up to him and said, "Master, you've come out of your closed-door meditation so soon?" She had thought that it would take at least a year and a half. Unexpectedly, it had only been a few days. It could only be said that Chu Kuangren, who possessed the universal cauldron physique and extraordinary level of understanding, could refine resources at a speed that was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. "And what about you? Aren't you also in seclusion?" Chu Kuangren asked curiously. "I received a message from the cult. The cult leader asked me to return. He said he had something important to do," Lan Yu answered honestly. "Oh." Chu Kuangren's eyes flashed. "What's so urgent about the Divine Radiant cult? I'm a little curious." "I don't know either. Initially, the young master was still in seclusion. I was still hesitating on whether or not I should go back first," Lan Yu said. "Are you familiar with the completed Light Divine Fire incantation?" "Yes, I've completely mastered it." At the mention of the Light Divine Fire incantation, Lan Yu's eyes turned cold. She did not know why the Divine Radiant cult would give her an incomplete technique, but she trusted Chu Kuangren 100%. If he said there was something fishy, then there must be something fishy. "All right. Then I'll follow you to the Divine Radiant cult." Chu Kuangren smiled. Then, his spiritual thoughts gushed out and left countless restrictions on the entire mountain range to ensure that the few of them would not be disturbed during their closed-door meditation. He also left a message for them. With their cultivation level, it'll take at least a year and a half to completely refine the harvest. We'll come back to them then. Let's go. Chu Kuangren smiled. Divine Radiant Cult. The leader of the Divine Radiant Cult was in the study room with a jade scroll in his hand. It contained some news from various places, including which orthodoxies' sky prides had fallen, which emperors were acting strangely, and so on. Interesting, the old guys in the dark sect seem to be making a move. I heard that one of the emperors had left the Divine Radiant cult's encampment yesterday. No one knows where he went. The leader of the Divine Radiant cult smiled. He was a middle-aged man with a rather elegant appearance. He wore a pure white robe that was clean and tidy from top to bottom. I'm afraid those guys are heartbroken this time. Their bachelor sage has been killed by Chu Kuangren, so they've lost the right to compete for the throne. An old man beside the leader laughed. Chu Kuangren. At the mention of that name, the leader's eyelids twitched. We must pay attention to this person. Third Elder, you've met him in the barren forbidden area. Is he really as powerful as the rumors say? Upon hearing that, the Third Elder's expression gradually turned serious. If possible, I hope that I'll never have to go against him. Is that so? Then we'll have to make some preparations. The leader of the Divine Radiant cult said meaningfully. The Third Elder's expression changed slightly. Are we going to do that? Yes, it's about time. I've already asked the Bachelor Sage to prepare and also sent a message to the Maiden Sage, asking her to return. Let's hope that everything goes smoothly. The Third Elder also knew that it was imperative to do that. If it were in the past, he would be happy to see it happen, but ever since he returned from the barren forbidden area, he had always felt a little uneasy. It seemed like Lan Yu had quite a close relationship with Chu Kuangren. At that moment, a wind chime in the study suddenly rang. The leader of the Divine Radiant cult channeled a surge of spiritual power into the wind chime. What's the matter? Leader, the Maiden Sage has returned, and she's brought someone with her. A voice came from the wind chime. Oh, she's back. Who did she bring back? Chu Kuangren. The leader and the Third Elder fell silent at the same time. After a while, the leader of the Divine Radiant cult said, I understand. The wind chime calmed down. However, the leader of the Divine Radiant cult and the Third Elder were not calm. It seems like things have changed earlier than planned. Chu Kuangren, it's fine. Let me meet this legendary Sky Pride. The leader of the Divine Radiant cult said calmly. He took out a crown and put it on. With the scepter in hand, he walked out of the study. Inside the Divine Radiant cult's temple, a group of Divine Radiant cult members were curiously sizing up a white-robed cultivator in the temple. That person stood in front of the Divine Radiant statue with an extraordinary aura. He looked more like a deity than the White Jade statue. That thought shocked the Divine Radiant cult members, and they quickly chanted the Divine Radiant cult several times in their hearts. Greetings, leader. Greetings, leader. The leader of the Divine Radiant cult arrived at the temple, and Chu Kuangren looked over as well. The leader of the Divine Radiant cult was stunned when he saw Chu Kuangren. At first glance, he felt that Chu Kuangren was extraordinary. That kind of celestial beauty and extraordinary aura was unparalleled in this world. When he looked at Chu Kuangren a second time, his eyes were filled with seriousness. He could not sense the slightest fluctuation of Chu Kuangren's cultivation base. Unfathomable. That was the feeling that Chu Kuangren gave the leader of the Divine Radiant cult. Chapter 606. The Holy Light Leader was observing Chu Kuangren. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren was also observing him with his eye of revelation. He roughly read through his information. His spiritual power cultivation level was that of a top-notch boundary emperor, but his understanding of Tao had reached the perfected realm. He was already considered an emperor. Greetings, my friend. My name is Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren chuckled. By addressing Chu Kuangren as a Taoist, Chu Kuangren had clearly placed himself on the same level as Chu Kuangren. The crowd frowned but did not say anything. Chu Kuangren was indeed qualified to do so. Brother Chu, your presence brings light to the Holy Light sect. The Holy Light sect's leader smiled. Not at all. It's just that my Lan Yu has received a lot of care from the Holy Light sect, so I'm here to visit. Lan Yu is the Holy Light sect's maiden sage. The two of them chatted for a while in the temple. Leader, may I know why you've summoned me back? Well, an emperor from the Holy Light sect woke up 2 days ago and wants to see you, the Holy Light sect's leader said. I see. Lan Yu nodded. The Holy Light sect's leader seemed to have a good chat with Chu Kuangren. He even prepared a banquet to entertain Chu Kuangren. At the banquet, The holy light sect's elders and sky prides were secretly observing Chu Kuangren with curiosity in their eyes. Bachelor sage, is this person really as terrifying as the rumors say? One of the sky prides asked Bai Tianxing curiously. Bai Tianxing nodded with a complicated expression. This person's strength is almost invincible among the younger generation of the Emperor's path. Those words shocked the other sky prides who had never been to the barren forbidden area. They could not help but gasp. Almost invincible. That comment was too unbelievable. Moreover, it came from the mouth of a taboo sky pride like Bai Tianxing. Bai Tianxing looked at Chu Kuangren and the Wei Lan Yu sat beside him and poured more wine for him. He felt a fire burning in his heart. Deep down he admired Lan Yu. Whether it was her wholly radiant physique or her holy and heroic looks, they were all things that he desired. To him she was a high and mighty goddess. Yet now the goddess that he admired was behaving so obediently in front of another man. How could he tolerate that? Especially when she only behaved this way in front of that man. Hold on, you must hold on. Soon all of this will be yours. Bai Tianxing suppressed the jealousy in his heart and did not show it. Soon the banquet ended. The next day, Chu Kuangren got up to wash up and did a lucky draw. Congratulations to the host for drawing the Book of Physique. Chu Kuangren, who was washing up, was stunned. What reward? A transcendent reward? CKME. The last time he received a supreme god-level reward was a few years ago. At that time he was not even a venerable one. That was his first super god-level reward. The lucky halo had given him extraordinary luck, and increased his chances of drawing something good by a lot. Now this was his second super god-level reward. Chu Kuangren could feel his breathing getting heavier. What opportunity in the desolate forbidden land! What emperor! In front of this transcendent reward, everything else had to stand aside. Open the inventory. Chu Kuangren opened his inventory. It was filled with all the prizes that he had won in the past few years. He set his eyes on the last prize. Book of Physique, Supreme God Level. By studying this book, one can derive thousands of physiques in the world and use them for one's own use. There was not much to the introduction, only one sentence. However, the information contained in that sentence made Chu Kuangren fall into deep thought. Derive thousands of physiques in the world and use them for one's own use. That was a very powerful ability. However, as far as Chu Kuangren knew, among the 3,000 Taoist physiques in Firmament Star, even the most powerful Chaos physique was only slightly stronger than the Heavenly Golden Imperial physique. It might not even be comparable to his Immortal Body or Universal Cauldron physique. Even if he derived all 3,000 of these physiques, they would not be as useful as his Immortal Body. So why was this Book of Physique ranked as a Supreme God level? There was only one answer. That was a physique that was even more powerful than the 3,000 Taoist physiques. Just like his Immortal Body and Universal Cauldron physique, there were definitely many other mysterious physiques in this world. This Book of Physique could derive and use them, which was why it was ranked as a Supreme God level. A physique that is above the 3,000 Taoist physiques? One day, I'll have to visit the vast universe outside Firmament Star. Chu Kuangren murmured. Then, he took out the Book of Physique. A golden ray of light shot out from the inventory, entered his body, and reached the depths of his consciousness. Chu Kuangren's consciousness followed the Book of Physique to the depths of his mysterious consciousness, which was also the rumored origin of his soul. The origin of the soul was the origin of one's consciousness. Every living being had an origin of their soul, but not everyone could find it. Only cultivators who were involved in soul cultivation techniques could find it. Now, Chu Kuangren's consciousness had found the origin of his soul under the guidance of the Book of Physique. It was a gray mass of air of unknown size. It was as small as a speck of dust, but it was also as vast as the universe. Upon closer inspection, this mass of air was made up of 3 streaks of gray air. Chu Kuangren seemed to have understood something. That was the sum of his soul energy. 3 streaks of gray air. Chu Kuangren then looked at the Book of Physique. It was an ancient golden book that emitted a faint golden light, and a series of mysterious patterns that crisscrossed each other. Those patterns seemed to be even more mysterious than Taoist patterns. That was a realm that Chu Kuangren had yet to touch. The Golden Book of Physique was inside the origin of his soul. The originally gray and gray origin of his soul suddenly lit up. Chu Kuangren moved his mind and the book of physique flipped to the first page, which recorded the Taoist physiques that Chu Kuangren currently possessed. Immortal body, universal cauldron physique, exquisite nine orifices sword heart, transcendent coalescence Taoist physique, infallible tormented physique, golden jade body. Looking at the golden jade body, Chu Kuangren almost forgot that he had acquired this physique in the past. The golden jade body was also a top-notch Taoist physique. However, to Chu Kuangren, who had several supreme Taoist physiques and 2 godly physiques, this top-notch Taoist physique was too insignificant. Chu Kuangren focused his mind on the immortal body. The book of physique flipped again and flipped to the next page that recorded the immortal body. The immortal body was divided into 6 levels. The host is currently at the 4th level, blood rebirth. There were 3 ways to improve it. 1. Increase one's cultivation level. 2. Refine 10 types of immortal Taoist supreme pills. 3. Chu Kuangren was studying the book of physique at the origin of his soul. When he came back to his senses, it was already late in the morning. He licked his lips. What a good book of physique. So mysterious. So useful to me. After studying it for a while, he realized that there were 2 main uses for this book of physique at this stage. The first was to derive his own physique and reach a state where he could use it perfectly. The second was to derive other people's physiques and use them for his own. As for the other uses, they had yet to be developed. Chu Kuangren could only use the first one for now. As for the second one, it was mainly because he did not have the materials to derive it. Chapter 607. Knock knock knock, someone knocked on the door. Master. Lan Yu's voice came from outside the room. Chu Kuangren got up and opened the door. Lan Yu was waiting outside. The moment they met, the book of physique within his body suddenly reacted. In Chu Kuangren's vision, Lan Yu's body was suddenly surrounded by rays of light that seemed to contain an endless amount of mysteries. That mysteries gave Chu Kuangren a feeling that he could understand them. He could understand the mysteries of the Taoist physique. That was the ability that the book of physique had given him. Every person with a unique physique was a material for him to study. Chu Kuangren moved his mind and the vision in his vision disappeared. Master, what's wrong? Lan Yu was confused. When she saw Chu Kuangren staring at her, she was stunned for a moment. It's nothing. Master, I'm going to the ancestors' land with the leader to meet the awakened Pope. The sect of light doesn't allow outsiders to enter the ancestors' land, so please wait outside. Lan Yu smiled apologetically. Chu Kuangren smiled back. It's fine. Go ahead. Don't worry, maiden sage. The sect of light will not neglect our guests. Let me accompany you today, brother Chu. The sect of light's 3rd elder said. Then I'll have to trouble you, 3rd elder. Lan Yu then left for the ancestors' land. The 3rd elder smiled at Chu Kuangren. Brother Chu, how about I accompany you for a walk around the city today? Thank you. No problem. The ancestors' land was where the emperors of each orthodoxy stayed. Due to the restrictions of the emperor's path, or to extend their lifespan, the emperors of each orthodoxy who had lived for more than 9,000 years would hibernate here. The radiant ancestors' land was a land of light. The path was paved with white jade and illuminated by divine flames. Magnificent palaces were built one after another, and each palace hid a powerful aura. The moment they stepped into the ancestors' land, Lan Yu felt that the aura here was different from the outside world. It was as if they were isolated from the outside world. The ancestors' land was a secret realm that was man-made. Here, the rules of the emperor's path did not apply. The radiant leader brought Lan Yu to a palace where they met a white-haired old man. The old man looked at Lan Yu with a benevolent expression. You must be Lan Yu, the owner of the holy radiant body. Lan Yu greets the supreme pontiff. Child, you don't have to be so courteous with me. I've asked you here today mainly to see how far you've cultivated your radiant divine fire technique. I've already cultivated to stage 7, but I still can't break through to stage 8 of the divine flame technique. Lan Yu hesitated. The radiant divine fire technique was divided into 9 levels. With each level, the power of the radiant divine flame became stronger. In just a few months, Lan Yu had reached the 7th level, which was the fastest record in the history of the divine radiant cult. One had to know that the current saint Bai Tianxing had cultivated for decades and was only at the 8th level. Moreover, if Lan Yu were to fight with Bai Tianxing, the winner would most likely be Lan Yu. One's cultivation level was not everything. There were other factors such as cultivation level, combat experience, and many others. Not to mention, Lan Yu had the holy radiant physique, which greatly enhanced the divine light fire. Today, I intend to help you break through to the 8th level. The white-haired Supreme Pontiff smiled and slammed his palm on the ground. A white altar made out of white jade, with all sorts of beautiful patterns carved on it, rose with a rumble. On the altar, a ball of white flame floated. Come, stand on this altar. There's a ball of my divine light fire on it. Study it well, and you'll definitely achieve great things. Lan Yu nodded slightly, as if she did not suspect anything, and walked onto the altar. She extended her hand into the divine fire of light, and the divine fire quickly spread throughout her body, transforming into white chains. Chains of light. Lan Yu's expression changed. Leader Supreme Pontiff, what is the meaning of this? The chains of light was a technique recorded in the divine light fire technique. It was a technique that was specifically used against heretics. But now the Supreme Pontiff was using this technique against her, the Saintess. Saintess of light, you'll find out soon. The white-haired Supreme Pontiff's face still carried that kind smile, but in Lan Yu's eyes it was exceptionally cold. She channeled her spiritual energy to break the chains of light, but this chains of light was set up by the Supreme Pontiff. With her current level of cultivation, there was nothing she could do. Don't waste your energy. This chains of light was infused with my Emperor's essence. Not many people in this world can break it. The white-haired Supreme Pontiff smiled and lightly stomped his foot. The palace rumbled as another altar rose. From outside the palace, someone walked in. It was Bai Tianxing. Saint, go up. The hierarch smiled faintly. Yes. Bai Tianxing was a little excited. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. What are you trying to do? Lan Yu questioned. I'm just spreading the news. The white-haired Supreme Pontiff raised his hand and channeled his spiritual energy into the two altars. In an instant, the altars glowed brightly. Mysterious runes began to circulate, and a strange fluctuation began to appear. Then on the altars, Lan Yu and Bai Tianxing's bodies uncontrollably burst into white flames. That was the divine light fire that they cultivated. At the same time, the divine light fire on Lan Yu's body began to pour towards Bai Tianxing's divine light fire, and its light gradually dimmed. My divine light fire is being drained. Lan Yu's expression darkened. This is the so-called divine light fire technique. I've never heard of such a thing before. That's because we've never told you that the divine light fire technique has a function. That is, cultivators who cultivate in divine fire can transfer their divine fire to each other. The leader smiled. This is all part of your scheme. You made me the Saintess and made me cultivate the divine fire technique. You wanted to transfer my divine fire to Bai Tianxing to increase his strength. Lan Yu said coldly. That's just one of our goals. What we value the most is still your holy body of light. Through this method of fire transfer, not only can we transfer your divine fire to the Sun of Light, but we can also transfer the origin of the holy Tao body in your body to the Sun of Light. From now on, the saint will have the holy radiant physique. The leader of the light sect said coldly. How could he just let an outsider become the saintess? Everything he did was for the sake of Bai Tianxing. If the divine light fire technique can be transferred to each other, then why are you so sure that I'll be the one to do it and not Bai Tianxing? Hey, you're thinking too much. The divine light fire technique I gave you is incomplete. That's why you're only able to cultivate up to the 7th level. On the other hand, the saint has cultivated the complete divine fire technique at the 8th level. As long as he doesn't want to, your divine fire can only be absorbed by him. I see. Lan Yu finally understood. At that moment, Bai Tianxing, who was on the other altar, looked at Lan Yu and said, Lan Yu, don't worry. Even if I've absorbed your divine fire and Taoist physique origin, I still love you. As long as you leave Chu Kuangren, I guarantee that you'll still be the saint of the divine light sect. Shut up. At that moment, Lan Yu yelled and glared at Bai Tianxing. Your words disgust me. Lan Yu, you. Bai Tianxing's expression darkened. Then don't blame me. He channeled the divine fire technique in his body, wanting to absorb Lan Yu's divine fire as soon as possible. However, the moment he channeled it, his expression changed. Chapter 608. Bai Tianqing channeled his divine fiery technique in an attempt to quickly absorb the divine fire within Lan Yu's body. However, he realized that the divine fire that was pouring towards him earlier was now motionless. Your plan was great, but your biggest mistake was underestimating my master. Once the flame relaying begins, there's no way to stop it. Then. Thank you very much. Lan Yu let out a low grunt. The divine fire on Bai Tianqing's body began to flow towards Lan Yu at an uncontrollable speed. What? How is this possible? The expressions of the white-haired pontiff and the churchmaster changed. The flame relaying process had been reversed. How could this be? This energy. Her divine radiant technique has reached the 9th level. The leader said in disbelief. He had given Lan Yu an incomplete version of the divine fiery technique. Yet now she had cultivated it to the 9th level. How is this possible? Quick, stop her. No, once the flame relaying process is interrupted, both parties will be in mortal danger. The radiant leader stopped the Pope. However, the Pope no longer had the kind look on his face. He said coldly, "That's better than watching the bachelor sage's divine fire get sucked dry by Lan Yu and become a cripple." The radiant leader's expression changed. At this moment there was a sudden cracking sound. A crack had appeared on the holy light lock on Lan Yu's body. It was gradually unable to withstand Lan Yu's increasing power. This woman has become a threat. She must be killed. The Pope raised his hand and struck towards Lan Yu. However, at that moment, a cold sword chi suddenly erupted from Lan Yu's body and poured out like a torrent. The Pope and the radiant leader were both forced back by the sword chi. The sword chi condensed in the void and gradually formed into a slender white-robed figure. His handsome and refined appearance was eye-catching. "It's you, Chu Kuangren." The radiant leader's expression changed. He seemed to have understood something. "This was all part of your plan." Chu Kuangren smiled faintly and said, "Hey, it's not really a plan. It's just some precautionary measures. After all, some people may look righteous on the surface, but who knows how despicable they are in the dark." The radiant leader naturally knew that Chu Kuangren was mocking him, but he still could not figure out how Chu Kuangren knew about this. And when did he set up these tricks? "The divine flame technique I gave Lan Yu was incomplete. She could not have cultivated it to the 8th level, let alone the 9th. What did you do?" The Radiant Church's patriarch asked. This was what he was most puzzled about. "It's very simple. I completed it." Hearing this, the Radiant Pope and the Radiant Pope were both stunned. That is the divine radiant cult's inherited cultivation technique. It has gone through countless predecessors' derivations to reach the current version. You're telling me that you managed to complete it in just a few days after meeting Lan Yu? Exactly. Chu Kuangren smiled faintly. He had obtained a technique completion card some time ago, and it was just right to use it on the divine light flame technique. Are you kidding me? The honorable sage roared, not believing Chu Kuangren's words at all. This kind of thing was too unimaginable. If it really happened, then the countless predecessors of the divine radiant cult had painstakingly derived this cultivation technique would just be a joke. How could he possibly accept this? Divine flame illumination. The honorable sage was even more furious now that he did not believe Chu Kuangren's words. He raised his hand and activated the divine flame illumination towards Chu Kuangren. However, Chu Kuangren simply waved his hand and a sword chi shot out, easily tearing the divine flame apart and forcing the honorable sage to retreat. How is this possible? What level has your strength reached? The honorable sage was shocked. No matter what, he was still the leader of an orthodoxy. He could not believe that he was forced to retreat by Chu Kuangren's sword. Not only that, but his opponent was just a clone that was left in Lan Yu's body. You're too weak. You're not qualified to be my opponent. Let the Pope beside you come, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Arrogant junior, how dare a mere clone speak such nonsense? The white-haired Pope snorted coldly as a terrifying aura erupted from his body. He activated the divine flame, which was much stronger than the honorable sage's because it was fused with a wisp of Emperor's essence. As expected, there are emperors in the Radiant sect who have cultivated Emperor's essence. Chu Kuangren was not surprised by his opponent's strength. He condensed his sword fingers, and the power of this clone instantly erupted, turning into a resplendent and majestic purple sword shadow. The sword chi and divine flame collided, and the entire palace shook violently as if it could collapse at any time. The commotion even affected the other emperors in the radiant ancestors' ground, and some of them were even awakened. Someone is fighting in the ancestors' ground. Who is it? Who dares to cause trouble in the ancestors' ground? How dare you? Surges of powerful auras erupted. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Chu Kuangren's clone clashed with the emperor's attack, and the sword chi on his body quickly dissipated. He was already showing signs of collapsing. Fortunately, Lan Yu, who was on the altar not far away, had already absorbed all the divine flame in Bai Tianqing's body. At this moment, Bai Tianqing was lying on the altar with a blank look in his eyes. His entire body was filled with despair and despair. His divine flame had been sucked dry, and his cultivation was gone from today onward. He would become a cripple. Lan Yu. The radiant leader was furious, and he threw a punch at Lan Yu. However, Lan Yu did not retreat. Instead, she threw out a punch of her own. Both fists were covered in divine flames, and when they collided, they were both pushed back. Your strength! The radiant leader was extremely shocked. He did not expect Lan Yu to be able to fight him with her current strength. This is all thanks to your plan that allowed me to absorb Bai Tianqing's divine flame. Coupled with the 9th level of the divine radiant flame technique, leader, you might not be able to defeat me now. Lan Yu chuckled and her eyes lit up. Upon hearing her words, the radiant leader was so frustrated that he felt like his lungs were about to explode. He was so angry that he was about to explode. His painstaking plan had ended up benefiting someone else. The bachelor sage was crippled, and the saintess was gone. The divine radiant cult would lose the right to fight for the throne. I'm going to kill you, the radiant leader roared. However, at that moment, a loud explosion came from the void. The entire radiant ancestors' grounds shook. Could it be? The radiant leader's expression changed as he looked at Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren smiled, and the sword chi on his body began to dissipate. Everyone, are you guys ready for my arrival? The sword chi clone disappeared completely. Following another loud explosion, a huge hole was torn open in the sky above the radiant ancestors' grounds. The enchanted boundary of the radiant ancestors' grounds had been violently broken by someone from the outside. At that moment, the sovereigns in the ancestors' grounds were awakened, and they looked at the hole in the sky in shock. A figure walked into the ancestors' grounds. He was dressed in white and had black hair, and a gorgeous longsword hung on his waist. A terrifying surge of sword chi swept across the entire ancestors' grounds as he entered. One by one, the palaces collapsed and shattered. Sovereigns, I'm here. Chapter 609. Emperors, I'm coming. An indifferent voice echoed in the sky above the light ancestral land. Chu Kuangren stepped into the light's ancestral grounds alone. In the ancestors' land, waves of terrifying emperor aura instantly broke out. How dare you? How dare you cause trouble here? Ignorant junior, you're courting death. Harumph, for so many years, no one has dared to provoke our divine radiant cult's prestige. You're courting death. Oh, you're a forbidden genius. If we were in the outside world, we wouldn't be able to do anything to you due to the rules of the Emperor's Road. However, since you dared to step into the light ancestors' land alone, don't blame us for what we're going to do. Cold voices rang out one after another. Rays of light rushed out from the shattered palace. The divine radiant cult's emperors had all appeared and locked their auras onto Chu Kuangren. However, Chu Kuangren took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already beside Lan Yu. Space technique. Seal this space first. Even if he has spatial techniques, he won't be able to leave this place. A few emperors made their moves. Taoist rhymes circulated and spiritual power was activated, turning into white pillars of light that completely sealed off the surrounding space. However, Chu Kuangren did not mind at all. He looked at Lan Yu and activated his Eye of Revelation. After seeing that she was safe and sound, he nodded slightly. It's good that you're fine. As soon as Lan Yu returned to the Divine Radiant Church, he had a bad feeling, so he purposely left a stream of sword energy on her body. Now it seemed that this decision was a wise one. He had relied on the positioning of the sword chi to arrive at this place. Everything is as you expected, Master. The School of Light is indeed up to no good, Lan Yu said, her admiration for Chu Kuangren growing. When they reunited, Chu Kuangren had already determined that the divine radiant cult was plotting something, so he helped her complete her cultivation technique and set up many layers of protective measures. She couldn't help but admire his ability. Chu Kuangren, how dare you trespass into the radiant ancestors' land? You're courting death. The radiant leader bellowed with a murderous intent in his eyes. The emperors were not restricted by the rules of the emperor's road in the ancestors' land. Now that Chu Kuangren had entered this place, he would have to face all the emperors of the divine religion himself. In the eyes of the radiant hierarch, this was a matter of certain death. No matter how strong Chu Kuangren was, there was nothing he could do. It's you who are courting death. In this world, there is no one who can touch my people. Today, even if the so-called God of Light descends, he will not be able to save you. Chu Kuangren's tone was cold and filled with killing intent. He fixed his gaze on the radiant hierarch. As he took a step forward, the Kunwa sword at his waist was unsheathed in an instant. A dazzling sword light burst out. The pupils of the radiant hierarch, who had been locked on by the sword light, contracted. He felt that no matter where he ran, he would not be able to escape from this sword. The difference in strength between the two was too great. No! The radiant hierarch roared and activated all of his power. A terrifying divine fire of light exploded and surged towards the sword light. However, as the sword light swept past, the divine flame was split into two. The leader of the radiant church didn't even have the time to scream before he was torn into two halves. Blood exploded and dyed the white ground red. All the martial emperors present narrowed their eyes. None of them were able to block that sword strike just now. There's such a terrifying sky pride on the emperor's road? Terrifying. Attack. Kill him. Without another word, all the martial emperors immediately attacked. A large amount of white divine flames with a surging Taoist rhyme charged towards Chu Kuangren and Lan Yu as if it was going to destroy the world. Today, I shall bathe the radiant ancestors' land in blood. An incredibly powerful surge of Taoist rhyme erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. With a lift of his arm, the surging Taoist rhyme condensed into a Taoist pattern and turned into a whirlpool. Heaven's whirlpool. An invincible technique was unleashed, shaking the heavens and earth. One after another, the divine flames were devoured by the whirlpool. Then a portion of it turned into a sea of flames that gushed out from the whirlpool. The whirlpool was like the mouth of a flaming dragon, devouring the divine flames. Oh no! What technique is this? The martial emperor's expressions changed drastically as they retreated. However, a few of them were still burned by the divine flames, their bodies charred black. However, Chu Kuangren's attack did not stop there. Rays of divine light circulated around his body as his three supreme Taoist physiques instantly erupted, forming a giant avatar that was thousands of meters tall. Ferocious Qi, Sword Qi, Transcendental Power. The power of the three supreme Taoist physiques flowed around the avatar, making it extremely terrifying. Chu Kuangren's Taoist physique fusion technique had improved when he refined the primordial Taoist origin, making it even more terrifying. Three supreme Taoist physiques. F*CK. Where the hell did this guy come from? Even the martial emperors were shocked. Not only was it the Taoist physiques, but they could also sense the presence of Emperor's essence from Chu Kuangren's avatar. This guy has even cultivated Emperor's essence. And not just one but 3 or even 5. D***M in it. Everyone, attack with everything you've got. Even among the martial emperors of the radiant ancestors' land, not many could cultivate Emperor's essence. Not to mention cultivating several Emperor's essences. Chu Kuangren's combat strength had far exceeded that of an ordinary martial emperor. Divine brilliance! A ray of divine light shot out from one of the martial emperors. Like the first ray of light that broke through the chaos, it contained a terrifying amount of power. However, the divine ferocious avatar only gently lifted its hand in the face of that martial emperor's all-out attack. Then it slowly unleashed a punch. A deafening boom was heard. The divine light shattered, and the monstrous fist Qi, sword Qi, and ferocious qi shrouded that martial emperor like an apocalyptic storm. Even an martial emperor would perish on the spot under such power. Divine brilliance. Divine flame inferno. Sacred sword of destruction. One by one, the martial emperors activated their ultimate techniques. Those with emperor's essence even activated it. In an instant, all kinds of terrifying energy waves enveloped the radiant ancestors' land, and the entire world rumbled. "Lan Yu, stand behind me," Chu Kuangren said. Lan Yu did not dare to be careless. She held up a white shield behind Chu Kuangren while keeping an eye out for possible ambushes. Roar! The divine ferocious avatar let out an angry roar. It swung its fists, channeling the power of its Taoist physique and emperor's essence to their limits. Waves of terrifying energy collided with one another. The entire radiant ancestors' land was almost destroyed. Billowing smoke and dust mixed with heterogeneous energy covered the sky. So this is all the martial emperors of the radiant ancestors' land can do. Chu Kuangren's voice could be heard amidst the smoke and dust. The divine ferocious avatar that he had activated had been destroyed, but his aura did not weaken at all. On the contrary, it became even more powerful. How can an attack like this not do anything to him? D***. That was our strongest attack. The martial emperors were terrified. It was the first time in their lives that they had encountered something like this. A sky pride could suppress the martial emperors. This was almost a fantasy story. Since the emperor's road was opened, nothing like this had ever happened. I can't believe there's an anomaly like you in this era of great battles. Young man, tell me your name. At that moment, an old voice came from the depths of the ancestors' land. Then a white pillar of light shot into the sky, and an extremely majestic radiant qi surged in the void. A golden-haired old man slowly walked out of the pillar of light. The martial emperors were delighted to see him. It's the great Pope. He has also awakened from his hibernation. That's great. Chapter 610. The Grand Holy Pontiff was the strongest emperor in the radiant ancestors' land. During the Grand Holy Pontiff's era, he was also a taboo sky pride. Among his peers, almost no one could fight him. Unfortunately, the Great Daoan Emperor throne did not exist in that era. Therefore, even the Grand Holy Pontiff was not fated to become an emperor. To preserve his strength and extend his lifespan, he had been hibernating in the ancestors' land for tens of thousands of years. Usually, he would not wake up unless something major happened. However, Chu Kuangren's rampage in the ancestors' land had finally awakened him. The Grand Holy Pontiff walked into the void and looked at Chu Kuangren with admiration in his eyes. I didn't expect an anomaly like you to appear in this era of great battles. What a surprise. However, a layer of coldness gradually appeared in his eyes. It's a shame that you dared to wreak havoc in the ancestors' land. What a waste of your talent. Chu Kuangren chuckled and activated his eye of revelation. All the information about the Grand Holy Pontiff was reflected in his eyes. Ultimate Daos, 7 surges of Emperor's essences, the 9th level of the Divine Radiant Flame technique, 3 self-created Boundary Emperor techniques. Wow, this combat strength is top-notch in the entire Emperor's Road. The Grand Holy Pontiff's strength was indeed amazing. Even the current Chu Kuangren would find it difficult to deal with him. It was not that he was afraid. If he fought with all he had, he was confident that he could make the Grand Holy Pontiff bleed here. However, with Lan Yu by his side, it would be difficult to ensure her safety if he fought with all his might. Moreover, there were a few Emperor Realm cultivators around. If they all attacked at once, it would be quite troublesome. Boom! Just when the two sides were confronting each other, the Radiant Ancestors' land's enchanted boundary suddenly erupted with a terrifying vibration. In the sky, cracks began to appear on the invisible enchanted boundary. A large amount of dark energy surged in from the outside world. Chu Kuangren smirked at that. They're here. The other Emperor Realm cultivators' expressions turned grim. This is dark energy. It's the Dark God sect. D***. Where did they get the guts to cause trouble in the Divine Radiant Church? Of all times, this energy, could it be? The Grand Holy Pontiff's expression changed as he stared at the sky above the enchanted boundary. With the influx of a large amount of dark energy, the sky of the light ancestral land turned pitch black, as if the day had turned into night. In the boundless darkness, a figure stepped into the ancestors' land. That person had black hair and a black robe. The majestic dark aura and Taoist rhymes in the surroundings came from this person. It's really you, the Dark Pope. The great Pope of Light's face was extremely gloomy. The two supreme pontiffs were figures of the same era. In that era, only the other had the ability to contend against them. That was the era when light and darkness were on equal footing. The other geniuses were overshadowed by them. I didn't expect you to have refined the part in order. The great Pope of Light said coldly. The fact that the other party could walk out of the ancestral land and come here meant that he had refined the heavenly part in medallion, and was no longer restricted by the rules of the Emperor's Road. I promised someone to come here and help him deal with some people. I didn't expect that you would also wake up from your hibernation. The Dark Pope laughed heartily. It was Chu Kuangren who had found him. When he first arrived at the Divine Radiant Church, Chu Kuangren had already expected to clash with them. Hence, he contacted the Dark God Society in advance and asked them to fulfill their promise and lend him a hand. Even though Chu Kuangren had killed the Bachelor of Darkness and had a grudge against the Dark God Society, they would not let go of this opportunity to attack the Divine Radiant Church. However, Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. The person who came was actually the Dark Pope. However, it made sense when he thought about it. There were not many pardon medallions, so of course, they should be given to the strongest emperors in order to maximize their value. It doesn't matter if it's you or this young man. Both of you will die here today, the great Pope of Light said with a gloomy expression. He raised his hand and attacked the Dark Pope. Bring it on. The Dark Pope was not to be outdone. The two of them, wrapped in boundless dark and light chi, collided with each other with a loud bang. As if there was a chaotic explosion, the entire radiant ancestors' land shook violently. In the void, darkness and light intertwined. Every time they collided, cracks would appear in the void and spread. It was an extremely terrifying scene. Fortunately, the radiant ancestors' land was not an ordinary secret realm. Its enchanted boundary was very stable. Otherwise, if the secret realm were to collapse and the space around it collapsed, not many people would be able to survive. I've said it before. I'm going to massacre the radiant ancestors' land today. Let's start with you. Chu Kuangren locked his gaze on the white-haired Pope. As he lifted his arm, the Taoist rhyme of the invincible technique spread and formed into intertwining Taoist patterns. When he unleashed a punch, the surrounding void cracked apart. Black and white intertwined, reflecting a terrifying apocalyptic scene where the sun and moon were reversed and the stars were falling. The invincible technique, heaven and earth reversal. The power of this technique was not much weaker than the two great pontiffs. Although the white-haired Pope had also cultivated the Emperor's chi, his strength was still not enough to deal with Chu Kuangren. Even if he gave it his all, he would not be able to withstand the power of this invincible technique. With a loud explosion, the white-haired Pope's body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. He was completely dead. What? This cultivation technique is too terrifying. Don't fight him head-on. The remaining martial emperors were all horrified. They quickly retreated, trying to distance themselves from Chu Kuangren. None of you shall leave today. Chu Kuangren sneered. With a flick of his sleeves, a ray of lightning shot out from his sleeves. It was imbued with Emperor's chi and released a terrifying Emperor's aura towards one of the emperors. That Emperor's bones and flesh were shattered as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The ray of lightning wandered in the void and arrived before Chu Kuangren. When the lightning dissipated, a gorgeous azure guqin appeared. Emperor weapon, spring thunder. 8 celestial demonic chords, boundless realm. Chu Kuangren plucked the guqin strings and performed the 8 celestial demonic chords again. This time, the 8 celestial demonic chords were infused with the Emperor's chi and the power of the Emperor weapon. The emperors felt as if they had been pulled into a boundless realm as guqin music Taoist rhymes continued to howl around them. Melodious reverie. A terrifying guqin wave appeared. One of the emperors was instantly blasted apart by the guqin music. The terrifying power of the zither music made people tremble with fear. You monster, go to hell! One of the emperors roared and attacked Chu Kuangren with a divine radiance that was condensed from the divine radiant flames. His Taoist Tao had reached perfection, and he had even cultivated 2 surges of Emperor's chi. His strength was not considered weak among the emperors. The power of that divine radiance seemed to be able to pierce through the void. Unfortunately, it was still not enough for Chu Kuangren. He plucked the guqin strings with his fingers. Raging waves. The guqin music was like an endless tide. The first wave of guqin music shattered the divine radiance, and the subsequent waves of guqin music landed on that emperor's body. Boom boom boom. Several loud explosions were heard. That emperor's body continued to explode, and blood sprayed out like a fountain. In the blink of an eye, that emperor was killed by the guqin music. Chu Kuangren stood proudly in the air with a beauty by his side. One man and one guqin played the celestial demonic chords, causing the emperors in the radiant ancestors' land to shudder. Chapter 6:11. The 8 celestial demonic chords was so powerful that it shook the heavens and earth. With the help of the emperor weapon and emperor's chi, the 8 celestial chords had caused the emperors of the radiant ancestors' land to fall one after another, dyeing the ancestors' land with their blood. No, if this goes on, the divine religion will be finished. D***. No, we must stop this person. The emperors of the radiant ancestors' land looked at Chu Kuangren with a grave expression that was filled with unforgettable hatred. The emperors were equivalent to an orthodoxy in the emperor's path. Now that Chu Kuangren was killing the emperors, he was destroying the foundation of the divine radiant ancestors' path. If this went on, the divine radiant ancestor would be gone. Buy me some time. I want to perform the god-beckoning ritual. One of the emperors took a deep breath and said. The expressions of the other emperors changed when they heard that. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. That emperor nodded solemnly before his figure flashed and disappeared into the depths of the ancestors' land. Chu Kuangren wanted to give chase when he saw that. But at this moment, the other monarchs rushed forward and stopped him. O Divine Radiant, help me kill the enemy. O Divine Radiant, may your light shine upon all living beings. Each of the emperors had an extremely sincere look on their faces. It was as if a surge of energy had been imbued into their bodies, causing their auras to increase to different degrees. Oh, is this the so-called power of faith? Chu Kuangren was curious. It was said that the deities that the divine religion and the dark god religion worshipped were real, but they had been in slumber for countless years. Through some method, the 2 deities' powers could be summoned. Interesting, but you guys still won't be able to escape death. Chu Kuangren said indifferently as his fingers plucked the spring thunder guqin. The guqin music reverberated and the sound waves reverberated. Several emperors were blasted away and exploded on the spot. Divine flame wall. At that moment, one of the emperors let out a roar, and the divine flame spread out to form a divine flame wall that surrounded Chu Kuangren. The other emperors also channeled their divine flames into the divine flame wall, hoping to trap and kill Chu Kuangren within. It's futile. Chu Kuangren's fingers plucked the guqin strings, and the Taoist rhyme of the 8 celestial chords increased to another level. Double echo of heaven and earth. The surging Taoist rhymes of the guqin crazily battered against the wall of divine flame. The wall of fire shook and exploded continuously. The terrifying sound waves caused some of the surrounding martial emperors to fall one after another. At this moment, in the distant palace, a vast and magnificent aura of light erupted, and it spread out like a tide and cleansed the heavens and the earth. The emperor that had left previously reappeared. However, his body was burning with white flames at this moment. His body was constantly being corroded by the flames, turning into ashes. Even so, it was as if he didn't feel any pain, and his face was filled with sincerity. God of light, I will burn my body with divine fire. I implore you to descend. Boom, boom, boom. An incomparably terrifying Taoist rhyme emanated from the burning emperor's body. Then a huge white shadow appeared in the void. It was a stalwart man wearing a crown and a gorgeous white robe. In his hand was a scepter inlaid with countless gems. Chu Kuangren had seen this man before. Right above the light palace. The god of light worshipped by the divine temple was exactly the same as this person. They've really summoned the deity. Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised. He did not expect the divine radiant cult to have such a trick up their sleeves. He felt a sense of pressure from the light god's shadow. It was obvious that his opponent was not easy to deal with. Heretic slay. The light god's golden eyes glanced at Chu Kuangren, and his tone was so calm that it seemed as if there was not a trace of emotion. Then the light god's shadow slowly pointed a finger at Chu Kuangren. A terrifying surge of light energy was contained within it, and wherever it went, circles of light Taoist patterns would circulate. It was extremely powerful. That attack was enough to kill 99% of the emperors in this world. However, that did not include Chu Kuangren. 8 celestial demonic chords. Grand melodic silence. The emperor's qi within Chu Kuangren's body circulated and channeled into the spring thunder guqin. Taoist patterns appeared on the guqin's body. Chu Kuangren pushed the power of the 8 celestial demonic chords to its limit. The guqin music was soundless, but the Taoist rhymes turned into solid Taoist patterns. The light Taoist patterns and the 8 sounds Taoist patterns collided with each other. It was a collision between Taoist qi and divine strength. Chu Kuangren was pushed back a few dozen feet. Even with his strong body, he could not help but feel suffocated. However, that feeling soon disappeared. His immortal body had always been one of Chu Kuangren's greatest protection. On the other hand, the light god's shadow began to crack under the impact, and the light Taoist patterns gradually disintegrated. The white divine flames on the emperor who sacrificed himself burned even more intensely, and half of his body had already turned into ashes. He was using himself as a medium to summon the deities. Once his body was burned to ashes, the light god's shadow would disappear. Chu Kuangren activated his eye of revelation and saw through that. He then activated the spatial conveyor technique and lifted his hand to unleash a palm attack. The palm energy pierced through space and arrived in front of the emperor, instantly shattering the rest of his body. Without a medium, the light god's shadow gradually dissipated. Before it completely disappeared, it glanced at Chu Kuangren. Blasphemer! I'll remember your aura. We'll meet again. Chu Kuangren smirked. You better pray that we don't meet again. Otherwise, I'll destroy you once again. Let's wait and see then. The light god's shadow snorted before it completely disappeared. Even the light god can't do anything to Chu Kuangren? D****. How can there be such a person? All the emperors were dumbfounded and fell into deep self-doubt. The light god could be said to be their highest faith. Yet now, even the light god could not do anything to Chu Kuangren. What could they possibly do to Chu Kuangren? At that thought, all the emperors were extremely terrified. I've said it before. No one can save you today, not even the deities. Chu Kuangren once again played the 8 celestial demonic chords. Not long after, almost all the emperors in the Radiant Ancestors' land were slaughtered by him. This was the biggest loss the Radiant sect had ever suffered. I want you dead. In the distance, the great Holy Light Pope, who was fighting the Dark Pope, was enraged when he saw Chu Kuangren slaughtering the emperors. He let out a roar, and the entire Radiant Ancestors' land shook violently. Rays of white light poured into his body from all directions, causing his aura to rise steadily. This is bad. He's sacrificing the Ancestors' land to absorb the energy within it. He's going to fight us to the death. The Dark Pope's eyes narrowed. The Ancestors' land was a secret realm that was opened up by the emperors. It contained a power of law that was completely different from the Emperor's Road. Without the heavenly part in order, the emperors could only be unrestricted within the Ancestors' land. However, the great Holy Light Pope was willing to destroy the Ancestors' land to forcefully absorb the light energy within it. It was obvious how angry he was. Chapter 6:12. The Radiant Ancestors' land of light's aura continued to leak out, causing the entire secret realm to shake. The ground kept cracking, and several powerful white light sources flew out. Those were the energies that maintained the Ancestors' land of light's secret realm. It was the Ancestors' land of light's foundation. However, now that the Grand Pontiff had taken the initiative to absorb the energy from the Ancestors' land of light, those several Ancestors' land of light's foundation had all separated from the Ancestors' land of light. What a great treasure! The aura of those Ancestors' land of light's foundation was so powerful that even Chu Kuangren could not help but be moved. Chu Kuangren channeled his mind power and turned it into an invisible giant hand that grabbed those light sources. Without taking a closer look, he threw them into his yin and yang ring. How dare you kill the Grand Pontiff and steal my Ancestors' land of light's foundation? You shall all die. The Grand Pontiff roared, and his vast light aura turned into a ray of divine light that shone towards Chu Kuangren and the Grand Pontiff. The power of that divine light was so terrifying that it shattered the void wherever it went. Even the Grand Pontiff felt his scalp tingle. Dark tide engulf. The Grand Pontiff let out a low roar, and the aura on his body rose to its peak, turning into a dark tide that could devour the heavens and earth. Chu Kuangren also raised his hand and unleashed a punch with his invincible technique. The 3 surges of energy exploded, causing the entire secret realm to shake violently. The secret realm that had already absorbed a lot of energy began to collapse. The enchanted boundary shattered, and countless spatial cracks spread out. Chu Kuangren grabbed Lan Yu. Retreat! He had just killed so many emperors, and his spiritual power and emperor's chi had been depleted. He did not want to fight the Grand Pontiff head-on. Whoosh! Chu Kuangren and Lan Yu turned into a stream of light and flew away. When he was some distance away from the Grand Pontiff's Taoist rhyme, he immediately used his spatial conveyor technique and disappeared. In this world, no one could stop him if he wanted to leave. The Grand Pontiff cursed when he saw that. F***ck, you sure run fast. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Dark heretic, you want to leave? No way. The Grand Pontiff would never let his opponent do as he wished. After absorbing the ancestor's land of light's energy, his strength multiplied. He raised his hand, and a large amount of light energy formed into a giant palm that blasted towards the Grand Pontiff. Do you think I didn't prepare anything before coming here? The darkness Great Pope coldly snorted. With a flick of his hand he tossed out a black skull. That skull grew in the wind and very quickly grew to the size of a mountain, surging with incomparably surging darkness energy. The skull and the giant palm collided. Black and white light ripples spread out. The Darkness Pontiff borrowed the impact to retreat and rush out of the secret realm. Damn it! Damn it! Dark Supreme Pontiff, heretics, you and I are irreconcilable enemies. The Great Pontiff of Light looked up to the sky and let out a long roar. He was a person who possessed the pure power of light, but at this moment, his expression was as malevolent as a demon. He was too angry. After this battle, if the Divine Radiant cult suffered a great loss, it would be considered light. The losses suffered by the Divine Radiant Church in this battle could only be described with one word. Almost annihilated. Puff! The long howl came to an abrupt end. The Great Pontiff of Light had forcibly absorbed the power of the ancestral lands. In addition, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Heretic! I will definitely investigate your background and kill everyone related to you. The Great Pontiff gritted his teeth and said with extreme hatred in his eyes. The heretic he was referring to was naturally Chu Kuangren. Compared to the Dark Supreme Pontiff, he hated Chu Kuangren even more. Almost all the emperors in the ancestral lands were killed by Chu Kuangren. Outside the radiant ancestral lands, within a mountain range, a ripple appeared in the void. Chu Kuangren and Lan Yu walked out. Master, are you alright? Lan Yu looked at Chu Kuangren and asked. I'm fine. Chu Kuangren shook his head. Apart from the slight depletion of his spiritual power and emperor's essence, he was basically unharmed. He even managed to obtain the foundation of the radiant ancestral lands because of this battle. It could be said that he had made a killing. At this moment, Chu Kuangren seemed to have sensed something. He looked into the void not far away and saw a black figure suddenly appear. It was the Dark Supreme Pontiff. Seeing who it was, Chu Kuangren said calmly, I didn't expect you to be able to follow me. It seems like you guys have left a tracking technique on me. He took out a black jade scroll. That was the tool he used to communicate with the Dark God Society. Is it this jade scroll? He lifted his hand and crushed the jade scroll. The Dark Supreme Pontiff looked at him with a hint of fear in his eyes. Speaking of which, the Dark God Society did not have a good relationship with Chu Kuangren. One could even say that they had a deep grudge against each other. After all, Chu Kuangren had killed the Dark Sage. Brother Chu, I've finally seen what you're capable of. I have more powerful techniques. Do you want to see them again, Dark God Society Pope? Chu Kuangren said as he fiddled with his fingers. Although he was severely injured, the Dark God Society was not much better off either. If they were to fight, he would not be afraid. Forget it, I'll save it for next time. Besides, the Dark God Society has nothing to do with you anymore. The Dark God Society said. Of course. The next time we meet, you and I may be enemies. Then tell me, should I take this opportunity to kill you? Humph. The Dark God Society Pope snorted and turned into a stream of light to leave. It was unknown if he was afraid of what Chu Kuangren had said, but he was afraid that he would attack him. Pfft. Chu Kuangren snorted and went to find a place to recover. The battle at the Radiant Ancestors' land was too eye-catching. The commotion was so huge that it could not be hidden. After some investigation, many forces soon learned about what happened at the Radiant Ancestors' land. All of a sudden, all the orthodoxies were shocked. Chu Kuangren and the Dark God Society Pope teamed up. Almost all the emperors in the Radiant Ancestors' land were dead. That news sounded unbelievable no matter how they thought about it. Many orthodoxies could not believe it, but after several investigations, they still confirmed the authenticity of the news. This Chu Kuangren is too terrifying. He did something like this not long after he left the barren forbidden area. Oh my God, how did he do it? How did his strength improve so much in such a short time? Terrifying. Also, how did the Dark God Society Pope get involved with Chu Kuangren? Besides, even with the Dark God Society Pope's help, it's still impossible for him to kill all the emperors in the Ancestors' land. There must be more to this matter. All the orthodoxies were trying to figure out why the Dark God Society would help Chu Kuangren. After all, their bachelor sage was killed by him. They were also guessing why Chu Kuangren would suddenly go against the Radiant Church. Logically speaking, both parties had no grudges against each other. However, none of them knew about this since they were not involved. But then everyone thought of something else. Who else could be a match for Chu Kuangren? Even Qin Tianchen, who was known as the reincarnation of the great emperor in the Emperor's Road, was no match for Chu Kuangren and was easily defeated. It was fine if the Sky Prides were no match for Chu Kuangren, but now, even the emperors with deep backgrounds were slaughtered by Chu Kuangren. This kind of strength was too shocking. He was almost invincible. The orthodoxies who realized this began to feel uneasy. Everyone realized that an uncontrollable anomaly had appeared in the Emperor's Road. This was something many orthodoxies did not want to see. Chapter 6:13. Inside the Swordsman tribe. The Swordsman tribe leader was not in a good mood when he heard about Chu Kuangren wreaking havoc in the Holy Light ancestral grounds. One could even say that he was depressed. Chu Kuangren and the Swordsman tribe were sworn enemies. However, Chu Kuangren's strength was getting more and more terrifying. He could even easily kill emperors now. There were not many in the Swordsman tribe who had such strength. D***. How can this person's strength improve so quickly? Could it be that all the fortunes of the world are concentrated on this person? The Swordsman tribe leader said with an ugly expression. The Emperor's throne was about to be revealed, and the Sky Prides were about to rise. However, Chu Kuangren was the only one who was invincible in this world. His brilliance had completely overshadowed the other Sky Prides. That was unbelievable. The Swordsman tribe leader's head hurt the more he thought about it. Deep down, he was starting to regret his decision. Was the Swordsman tribe in the wrong? They should not have allowed Jian Daozi to provoke this person. Boom! At that moment, the Swordsman tribe was shaken. A sword ray suddenly shot into the sky from deep within the Swordsman tribe, and an overwhelming sword-based Taoist rhyme engulfed the entire Swordsman tribe. All of a sudden, tens of thousands of swords rang out. This aura, the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign, has left the ancestral grounds. The Swordsman tribe leader was delighted. The sword light that soared into the sky gradually dissipated, revealing a slender figure. It was a handsome middle-aged man, dressed in a gray robe, with an ancient long sword hanging from his waist. This man was the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign that the Swordsman tribe leader had mentioned, the strongest emperor of the Swordsman tribe. The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign took a step forward and arrived at the Swordsman Palace. Swordsman tribe leader, come out and see me. His cold voice was laced with a piercing aura. The Swordsman tribe leader immediately walked out with a group of elders. They looked at the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign excitedly and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign. Congratulations on refining the Heavenly Pardon Order. From now on, you are no longer restricted by the Emperor's path. Where is our tribe's taboo now? The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign asked. The swordsman tribe leader's expression turned grim. The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign noticed the change in his expression and said, Tribe leader, tell me, where is the taboo now? The taboo now is dead. The sword race's patriarch gritted his teeth as he spoke. The moment he finished speaking, a piercingly cold sword pressure burst forth, causing the sword race's clan leader and all the elders to be flattened onto the ground. Bastard! Since the taboo is dead, how can our sword clan fight for the throne of this world? Tell me, how did the taboo die? The sword emperor of wind and cloud had a gloomy expression on his face. He was furious, and as his mood changed, the surrounding wind and clouds began to surge, the mountains and rivers began to shake. The leader of the sword race hurriedly explained everything that had happened. Chu Kuangren, such an anomaly has actually appeared in this generation. The aura of the sword of wind and cloud gradually calmed down. However, the killing intent in his eyes did not diminish in the slightest. In fact, after finding out who Jian Daozi's killer was, it burned even more fiercely. He was not afraid of his opponent's strength. In his era, he was also a taboo prodigy. One man and one sword, almost no one dared to compete with him. After living for so many years, he refused to believe that he could not defeat Chu Kuangren. No matter how monstrous Chu Kuangren was, he had only lived for a few decades. On the other hand, he was a taboo emperor who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Chu Kuangren, very well. All of you, do your best to find this person's whereabouts. The swordsman will not let this matter rest. The sword emperor of wind and cloud said coldly. Then he turned around and left in a sword ray. Aside from the swordsman, the other ancient orthodoxies that had received the heavenly pardon order from the barren forbidden area also had their emperors walk out of the ancestral land. The moment these emperors left the ancestral land, they immediately learned about the situation in the current era. They also learned about Chu Kuangren. All the emperors were shocked that such an anomaly had appeared in the current era. Like the swordsman who had a grudge against Chu Kuangren, they were not just shocked, they were furious. For example, the Bai family and the demonic tribe. In a dark, mysterious forest that was shrouded in fog all day long, footsteps could be heard. It was a young man. If anyone from the Seven Emotions sect was here, they would definitely recognize this person. This person was Li Salong. In order to kill Chu Kuangren, Li Salong did not hesitate to kill his honorable teacher. Killing Chu Kuangren had almost become Li Salong's obsession. However, Chu Kuangren was getting stronger day by day. Now he could even wreak havoc in the Honorable Light's ancestral land and kill a group of emperors before leaving. Since Li Salong was not even at the Forbidden Realm, how could he fight him? He's the only one I can rely on now. Li Salong took out a wooden box and murmured. He knew that coming into contact with that existence was definitely a crazy and risky move. However, he had no other choice now. As long as he could kill Chu Kuangren, he would go all out. Li Salong gripped the wooden box tightly in his hand. With a determined look in his eyes, he walked into the depths of the forest. He came to the front of a cave that was filled with layers of seals, took out a jade token, and threw it into the cave to open the seal. The moment the seal was opened, a gush of gray mist gushed out from the cave. When the surrounding flowers and trees came into contact with the mist, they instantly withered and died. Li Salong could not help but take a few steps back. The Pestilence Evil Physique is one of the top 30 supreme Taoist physiques among the 3,000 Taoist physiques. It's indeed terrifying. Even after being sealed by the ancestral master's wooden dragon needle, the aura it emits still has such terrifying effects. Li Salong said with a trembling heart. Then, he took out a bottle of medicinal pills and swallowed them before entering the cave. When he reached the depths of the cave, he saw a skinny figure who was chained up. This person was bound by 6 chains. 4 of them were chained to his limbs, while the other 2 were pierced into his scapulae, sealing his cultivation. The ends of these 6 chains were connected to the mountain wall, and there were faint glimmers of runic light on them. It was obvious that these were not ordinary chains. "Oh, you're here to collect blood again?" The skinny figure suddenly raised his head. It was an old man with sunken eyes. The way he looked at Li Salong was extremely cold, like a ghost. Li Salong could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He quickly cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, Poison Sovereign. The skinny elder snorted. That old man Mu Longzi sealed me here. For the past tens of thousands of years, he and his descendants have extracted my poisonous blood to refine poisons. How many times have they extracted my poisonous blood? Those who come here are either cowering or bossy. This is the first time they've been so respectful. What are you planning? Mu Longzi was the ancestor of Li Salong's bloodline. Years ago, he discovered the poisoned sovereign and tried to seal him. Using his poisonous blood as a catalyst, he created all kinds of poisons. After Mu Longzi's death, his descendants continued this tradition. Every once in a while they would come to collect blood. Today, I'm not here to collect blood. I'm here to release poisoned sovereign, Li Salong said lightly. Oh. Hearing this, the poisoned sovereign's eyes brightened. However, he did not appear too excited. He said lightly, "What's the reason? I want Senior to help me deal with someone." "Heh who?" "Once Senior agrees, I will naturally tell you." "Hee. As long as you can release me, I can deal with anyone. As long as it's within the limits of the Emperor's path. Even if you want me to kill those ancient emperors, it's not impossible." The poisoned sovereign smiled eerily. He really wanted to break the seal. As long as he could leave this place, he could kill anyone. "All right, Senior, please make the heavenly oath." "Sure." Chapter 614. Li Salong met up with the Poison Emperor. In exchange for releasing the Poison Emperor, Li Salong forced him to swear a heavenly oath. Then he took out a wooden box that contained 12 green needles. He then pierced the green needles into the Poison Emperor's body. In an instant, a terrifying surge of spiritual power was released from the Poison Emperor's body. A green needle that was as thick as a thumb was slowly forced out from the back of his neck before it was ejected and turned into smoke. Once the wooden dragon needle was out, the Poison Emperor's aura skyrocketed again. The entire mountain range trembled. The 6 chains rumbled and the runic lights on them flickered, but they still could not restrain the Poison Emperor. After a loud explosion, the chains were broken, and the Poison Emperor was freed. "Kid, tell me who you want to kill." "Chu Kuangren." Li Salong gritted his teeth and spat out a name. Then, he threw out a colorful jade token. "This is the heavenly pardon order that I obtained from the barren forbidden area. Refine it before killing this person." The Poison Emperor's eyes lit up with joy when he received the heavenly pardon order. Then he was surprised. "The person you want to kill is a Sky Pride." "That's right," Li Salong said solemnly. "He's the most terrifying chosen of the present age, no, perhaps the most terrifying one in all of history." No matter how much he hated Chu Kuangren, he had to admit it. Interesting. Divine Radiant Church. Ever since Chu Kuangren caused trouble, the Radiant Ancestors' ground was now an empty shell. The power of light had completely disappeared. In the Ancestors' ground, a golden-haired old man sat cross-legged. It was the Radiant Pope who was recuperating. In the outside world, the Radiant Church was being maintained by a group of elders, so it would not fall apart anytime soon. After all, the faith was still there. As long as the faith did not collapse, the Radiant Church would not be destroyed. Buzz. Suddenly, a slight fluctuation appeared in the void of the Ancestors' ground. The Radiant Pope opened his eyes and looked at the void. "This aura, it's you. I can't believe you've also refined the heavenly pardon order." Then a person slowly walked out from the void. The person was dressed in a gray robe with an ancient longsword hanging on his waist. His cold aura made the void around him feel like it was being cut apart. "Long time no see, Radiant Pope." The person was the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor of the Swordsmen. The two of them were not from the same generation, but they had met face to face. Although they were not friends, they did not have any enmity. "Why are you looking for me?" "Ask someone." "Who?" "Chu Kuangren." Hearing this name, the great Pope of the Light Church could not contain his murderous aura. Divine flames of light roared out from his body. After asking a few elders, he found out that the heretic who wreaked havoc in the Radiant Ancestors' land was called Chu Kuangren. Every time he thought of this person, he found it hard to restrain his anger. "Why ask him? My sword clan has enmity with this person. He killed the taboo of my clan. I heard that the Radiant's ancestral land fought with him before, so I came to ask about it." The Sword of Wind and Cloud said indifferently. Knowing that the swordsmen were also Chu Kuangren's enemies, the Holy Light Pope's gaze towards the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor had softened a little. He was no longer so guarded against him. This person's strength is indeed very strong. How strong? In a one-on-one fight, I might not be a match for this person. The Holy Father of Light pondered for a moment before speaking. His words shocked the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor. After all, Chu Kuangren was also a taboo sky pride in the past. His current strength was not much different from the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor, but now he had to admit that he might not be able to defeat a young sky pride of this generation. Is he really that strong? This person is an anomaly that cannot be measured by common sense. The Holy Father of Light recalled the scene when Chu Kuangren destroyed the Divine Light Shadow. That kind of power indeed made his heart palpitate. Since he is an anomaly, he should not exist in this world. The Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor said, "What do you want to do? Join forces to destroy this person. With him around, the others will not have a chance to become emperors. I think the emperors will not be willing to let him continue to exist." A murderous intent flashed across the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor's eyes. Join forces? Other than you and me, who else? The taboo of the demonic tribe and the Dark God Order were both killed by this person. I will talk to the emperors. What? You want me to cooperate with the Dark God Order? Are you kidding me? The Holy Father of Light was furious. Chu Kuangren had just come to the ancestors' land with Chu Kuangren not long ago. And now he wanted to cooperate with them? Was there something wrong with him? Could he be any more magical? The most important thing now is to get rid of Chu Kuangren. You should be able to sense that the energy waves coming from Mount Emperor are getting stronger and stronger. An emperor's ascension is imminent, and once Chu Kuangren becomes an emperor, it'll be difficult for him to take revenge. So what? It's not like we don't have any emperors in the Dark God Order. The Holy Father of Light snorted. The emperors are all in the 9 heavens, so they can't intervene here. Besides, if we can't take revenge now, it will be even more difficult when he becomes an emperor. The Holy Father of Light took a deep breath and pondered. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "All right, we will prioritize killing Chu Kuangren. As for the Dark God Order, we will settle the score later." Compared to the Dark God Pope, he hated Chu Kuangren more. Very well. The Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor nodded. After a brief discussion, the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor left. An operation against Chu Kuangren was in progress. In a certain city. At this moment, Chu Kuangren was recovering his spiritual power in a cultivation pagoda that was specially provided for cultivators. Not only that, but he also took out the Ancestor Land's foundation stones that he obtained from the Radiant Ancestors' Land. There were a few crystals that were filled with the power of light. The power of light contained within them was incomparably majestic and terrifying. This level of light energy is extremely useful for light Dao cultivators. I can give it to Lan Yu. However, one crystal was enough for Lan Yu to refine for a long time, and he had 4 of them in his hands. He pondered for a while and decided to refine the remaining 3 crystals. After the barren forbidden area ends, I guess many orthodoxies will have received the heavenly pardon order. Those emperors should be showing up soon. Now that I'm standing in the eye of the storm, those people won't let me go so easily. I have no background in this emperor's path, so if I want to fight against them, I must quickly become stronger. I can't let go of any opportunity to improve myself. Chu Kuangren murmured and refined the remaining 3 light crystals. The combined energy of these 3 crystals was not any weaker than the primordial Taoist origin, so he had 2 more Emperor's essences in his body. At this moment, he had 9 Emperor's essences in his hands. 9 Emperor's essences was the highest cultivation level a cultivator could achieve below the Emperor realm. Due to the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, it was difficult to improve further. The next step was to become an emperor. With the 9 Emperor's essences formed, Chu Kuangren's strength had improved again. In a good mood, he opened the fantasy roulette and drew a prize. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the legendary rune. Heavenly 9 Dragons Transformation. Rune? Heavenly 9 Dragons Transformation? Chu Kuangren opened the rune and retrieved it. His eyes lit up when he saw that it was a rune that could forcibly increase one's strength. It absorbed the natural energy of heaven and earth and transformed it into dragon chi. Once the dragon chi entered one's body, one's strength would skyrocket without any side effects. This was much more awesome than the 9 deaths blazing blood art. Chapter 6:15. After the barren forbidden area's opportunity of fortune appeared, the emperor's path fell into a brief period of peace. There were no other opportunities of fortune that appeared. Chu Kuangren took advantage of this period of time to find a place to temporarily settle down and organize his gains during this period of time. It was worth mentioning that Chu Kuangren was most interested in the Supreme Deity Tier Physique Tome. It was also the one he had been studying, and his research subject was Lan Yu. Lan Yu possessed the Holy Radiant Physique, which was a supreme Taoist physique. As Chu Kuangren interacted with her, he had also deduced her Taoist physique through the Book of Physiques and gradually made it his own. "Master, are you done?" Lan Yu blinked as she looked at Chu Kuangren, who was holding her hand. These days, Chu Kuangren had been doing intimate things with her, such as holding her hand or patting her head. He said he wanted to study her Holy Radiant Physique. Although she did not resist, she was still a little curious. Holding her hand and patting her head was enough to study a supreme Taoist physique? "Yes, I'm done." Chu Kuangren retracted the spiritual power that he had injected into Lan Yu's body. He raised his hand and a white light appeared in his palm. That was the power of light. Lan Yu's eyes widened. Did it really work? She was in disbelief. He could study a supreme Taoist physique just by touching her head and holding her hand? Wasn't this too magical? She had heard that the Heavenly Golden Palace had spent tens of thousands of years researching and developing the Heavenly Golden Imperial Physique. Moreover, it was not the complete version of the Heavenly Golden Imperial Physique. Chu Kuangren had only spent a few days to do so. "Master, you're just too amazing." Lan Yu looked at Chu Kuangren with sincere admiration. The longer she stayed by Chu Kuangren's side, the more she realized how amazing Chu Kuangren was. Her admiration for him grew day by day. Of course. Chu Kuangren touched his nose, enjoying her admiration. In fact, he was a little surprised himself. This physique tome was too amazing. It was no wonder it was a supreme deity tier reward. It had only been a few days, and he had already studied the Holy Radiant Physique. Moreover, the process was not difficult. As long as Lan Yu stood in front of him, he could understand the mysteries of her Taoist physique. If they were intimate, it would speed up the process. Now, he had the power of a supreme Taoist physique. "I'm still far from being able to fully comprehend the Book of Constitution." Chu Kuangren did not become complacent. On the contrary, he set a goal for himself. One day he would capture all the physiques in this vast universe and fuse them into his body, creating a brand new physique that belonged solely to him, the strongest and most terrifying physique. Another 2 days passed. On this day, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the cultivation tower in the city, and a huge Dharma idol suddenly appeared out of thin air. This Dharma idol overflowed with colorful lights, and its aura was peerlessly tyrannical. It was mixed with many different types of power, yet it was perfectly fused. The Dharma idol hovered in the sky and its face could not be seen clearly. However, the aura it emitted caused all the cultivators in the city to tremble. Fortunately, this Dharma idol only appeared for a moment before disappearing. Although it was only for a moment, the impact it caused was huge. All the cultivators in the city were discussing it. The top of the cultivation tower. Chu Kuangren put away the Dharma idol and smiled with satisfaction. The power of the Dharma idol is indeed extraordinary. Although this Dharma idol is based on the divine ferocious avatar, and fused with the other Taoist physique powers, strictly speaking, it is no longer the divine ferocious avatar. From now on, it will be called the 10,000 Taoist avatar. The 10,000 Taoist avatar wanted to fuse the power of all the Taoist physiques in the world into one Dharma idol. It was obvious how ambitious Chu Kuangren was. He walked out of the cultivation tower and found that many cultivators had gathered outside. "Tower Master, please tell us who the owner of the Dharma idol is. Let us go and pay him a visit." "Yes, Tower Master, such a strong cultivator has come to our riverside city. We can't neglect him. Please tell us." The cultivators were asking the cultivation Tower Master. However, the Tower Master had his own difficulties. Everyone, you know the rules of the cultivation tower. We will never reveal the information of cultivators. Please leave. The tower master said. The cultivation tower was similar to an inn. It was specially prepared for cultivators who needed to go into closed-door cultivation. In other words, it was a place to do business. Business must be honest, and the tower master would not easily reveal the information of his customers. Chu Kuangren smiled in satisfaction when he heard the tower master's words. However, at that moment a cultivator took out his communication compass. As if he had received a message, his expression changed drastically. What? The swordsman, demonic tribe, divine radiant cult, and other sage orthodoxies have all come to the Seven Emotions sect to force them to hand over Chu Kuangren. F***CKME, what's going on? Is this a war between orthodoxies? One by one, the cultivators' communication compass vibrated. Obviously, they had all received the news. Not far away, Chu Kuangren's expression turned grim. Force the Seven Emotions sect to hand over Chu Kuangren? What a joke. He's here, why would he go to the Seven Emotions sect? Soon he had a rough idea of what was going on. Chu Kuangren was alone in the sea of people, so it was hard to find him. However, the Seven Emotions sect was different. With such a huge orthodoxy there, he could not leave even if he wanted to. The swordsmen and other forces were trying to force him to show himself through the Seven Emotions sect. This news must have been released by the swordsmen and other forces as well. As for why they would go to the Seven Emotions sect, that was even simpler. Chu Kuangren had been in the Emperor's path for a long time, and had made enemies with many forces. Only the Seven Emotions sect was on good terms with him. During his trip to the barren forbidden area, Lung Ningyu and Red Moon were also very close to him. Who else could he go to if not the Seven Emotions sect? Hey, you're finally here. Chu Kuangren laughed instead of getting angry. However, the chill that emanated from his body made the surrounding cultivators shiver. Lan Yu was not afraid of the chill as she walked up from behind. Master, do you want to go? She had also heard the discussions of the people around her. Of course I want to go. Chu Kuangren let out a cold smile. He and Lan Yu packed their things and left the cultivation tower. Meanwhile, the news of the emperors from various forces going to the Seven Emotions sect had spread throughout the emperor's path in a short time. All of a sudden, every cultivator was shocked. Everyone's attention was focused on the Seven Emotions sect. This is going to be interesting. The Seven Emotions sect is an ancient orthodoxy after all, but now they're being threatened by so many ancient orthodoxies because of Chu Kuangren. TSK, this is just too tragic. The swordsmen, the demonic tribe, the Bai clan, the Wang clan, the Yin Yang sect, and even the Qin clan. My goodness, just how many forces are there? There's indeed an emperor in the Seven Emotions sect, but they can't withstand so many emperors from so many ancient orthodoxies. This Chu Kuangren's influence is just too great. He alone has attracted so many ancient orthodoxies. This should be enough to leave his name in the history books. Do you guys think Chu Kuangren will go to the Seven Emotions sect? It's hard to say, but if he doesn't go, the Seven Emotions sect will definitely not end well. Who asked them to be related to Chu Kuangren? Chapter 6:16. The Seven Emotions sect. As one of the ancient orthodoxies in the Emperor's path, the Seven Emotions sect was not considered weak. In fact, it was one of the top orthodoxies in the Emperor's path. However, the Seven Emotions sect was now facing an unprecedented crisis. In the Seven Emotions sect's Grand Hall, Cold Moon Fairy was pacing back and forth with an ugly expression on her face. That moment, Lung Ningyu and Red Moon walked in. Honorable teacher, another emperor has arrived, Red Moon said with a gloomy expression. In the void outside the Seven Emotions sect, many figures were floating in the air, each of them emitting an extremely domineering emperor's aura. These emperors were the strongest cultivators in their respective ancient orthodoxies. Just one of them was enough to intimidate everyone. But now, such a group of people were all gathered together. Such a scene was extremely rare. Another one. Who is it? Cold Moon Fairy asked. There were already enough emperors, so why was there another one after another? Was there an end to this? It's the emperor of the runic lands, Xiao Fu Huang. That old man is here too. Cold Moon Fairy's expression changed slightly. She had read about Xiao Fu Huang in the ancient records before. He was an old immortal who had lived for at least 100,000 years in the emperor's path. His lifespan was definitely considered long among the emperors. Honorable teacher, is there a need for so many emperors just to deal with Brother Chu? Red Moon asked in confusion. The emperors outside were all recorded in the historical records. They were all legendary figures in the emperor's path. If it were not for the lack of great Taoists in the past, many of these emperors would have become emperors by now. Yet now, all of them were gathered together to deal with Chu Kuangren. That was too much. No matter how powerful Chu Kuangren was, he was still a young sky pride. Of course. Cold Moon nodded solemnly. If Brother Chu doesn't die, their sky prides won't be able to become emperors. They will always be suppressed by him and live in his shadow. They have to pave the way for their juniors. You make it sound nice. In the end, it's just the juniors who can't defeat Brother Chu, so the seniors came out to cause trouble. Red Moon snorted and snorted. Hearing this, the Cold Moon Fairy could not refute it. In fact, that was the case. Senior sister, do you think Brother Chu will come? I don't know. Lung Ningyu shook her head. Do you want him to come? Chiyu asked again. This question stunned Lung Ningyu for a moment. Then she went silent for a moment and shook her head. I don't know. She wanted to see Chu Kuangren again. However, he didn't want the other party to come here and take the risk. However, if the other party didn't come, his sect would have to bear a huge risk. Right now she was very conflicted. This was a complicated emotion that she had never experienced before. Ever since she met Chu Kuangren, she realized that the changes in her emotions were much more intense than before. Chi Yu and the Cold Moon Fairy exchanged glances. It looked like Lung Ningyu was really tempted, and it was quite deep. Sigh, let's think of a way to get through this tribulation first. Outside the Seven Emotions Gate. In the sky, a dozen figures stood in the air, including the Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud, the Great Pontiff of Light, and the Great Pontiff of Darkness. The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor looked at a lady who was standing at the entrance of the Seven Emotions Sect's Grand Hall and said, Misty Queen, you guys have 2 days left. If Chu Kuangren still doesn't show up after 2 days, we'll make our move. Upon hearing that lady, who was also Misty Queen, turned grim. She was an emperor of the Seven Emotions sect who had just finished refining the heavenly part in order, and walked out of the ancestral land. She did not expect to be in such a desperate situation the moment she stepped out. However, as an emperor of the Seven Emotions sect, she had no choice but to face it. People like you trying to force him out when you can't catch him. You've wasted your years. Whatever you say. You only have 2 days anyway. The Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor said calmly. After living for so many years he had heard all sorts of things. Just a few words from Misty Queen could not change his mind at all. Misty Queen snorted coldly. She looked calm but deep down she was extremely anxious. If this went on, the Seven Emotions sect would really be in danger. She turned around and walked into the Grand Hall. Have you found Chu Kuangren yet? Misty Queen asked Lung Yu. No, Lung Yu said helplessly. She had already used all the information channels that the Seven Emotions sect could use. However, she still could not find any traces of Chu Kuangren. It made sense when she thought about it. If Chu Kuangren wanted to hide, who would be able to find him? If it was that easy, the swordsman and demonic swordsman would not have come to the Seven Emotions sect to force Chu Kuangren out. Even if we find Brother Chu, Misty Queen, do we really have to hand him over? Red Moon frowned and said, what else? Are we really going to sacrifice the entire Seven Emotions sect because of him? Misty Queen said indifferently. She had never met Chu Kuangren before, so she had no feelings for him. Between a stranger and the Seven Emotions sect, she would naturally choose the Seven Emotions sect. Red Moon, the Cold Moon deity, and the others knew this too. After hearing what Misty Queen said, they felt a little uncomfortable, but they did not refute. The Seven Emotions sect was indeed facing a life and death crisis, and Chu Kuangren was obviously the only key to breaking out of this predicament. Besides, the Seven Emotions sect's true leader was Misty Queen, so there was nothing Cold Moon deity could do. Someone's here. At that moment, Misty Queen suddenly looked outside the Seven Emotions sect's mountain entrance in surprise. Red Moon, Lung Yu, and the others were delighted too. Is Chu Kuangren here? However, when they looked at the mountain entrance and saw who it was, their faces immediately fell. Red Moon even revealed a look of disgust. Why is this guy here? Outside the Seven Emotions sect's mountain entrance, two figures walked in. One was an old man while the other was a young man. The old man walked in front while the young man followed behind. The two figures leaped into the air and soon arrived at the Seven Emotions sect's grand hall to meet the group of emperors. Everyone instantly shifted their gaze to the old man, and their eyes gradually revealed a hint of seriousness. The old man's eyes were deeply sunken, his face was haggard, and there was a strange gray chi constantly circulating around his body. The gray chi made the martial emperors present shudder in fear, as if it was some kind of terrifying creature. It's him, the poison sovereign. Some of the knowledgeable emperors recognized who it was. 10,000 years ago, the poison sovereign was already a famous emperor, and many emperors had heard of him. I heard that you guys are also looking for Chu Kuangren. I hope you don't mind if I join in. The poison sovereign chuckled. Are you here to help him or to kill him? The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign said. I'm here to kill him. In that case, we welcome you with open arms, the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign said. Meanwhile, Misty Queen's eyelids twitched as she said, how many people has this Chu Kuangren offended? It's understandable that the emperors from other orthodoxies are here to kill him. After all, they're here to help their descendants become emperors. But what about this poison sovereign? He's always been a loner, and he had disappeared for a long time since 10,000 years ago. Why is he here now, and he's here to kill Chu Kuangren too? Cold Moon Deity felt helpless at her words. Brother Chu, your ability to offend people is a little too great. Chapter 6:17. The arrival of the poison sovereign increased the strength of the group of emperors. At this point, the number of emperors who wanted to go against Chu Kuangren had reached 15, and each of them was a top-tier emperor. Each of them had cultivated the emperor's essence. This power was enough to sweep through the emperor's road, and no one would be able to match it. F***ck, this must be Li Salong's doing. Red Moon glared at Li Salong and gritted her teeth. Since he came with the poison sovereign, it was obvious that they were in cahoots. Li Salong seemed to have noticed her gaze and looked over with a cold smile on his face. What do you guys think? Will Chu Kuangren come, or will he choose to live? It's none of your business whether he comes or not. Red Moon was a hot-tempered person, so she cursed. Hey, if he doesn't come, the Seven Emotions sect will be finished today. Poor you and your senior sister. You've already given your bodies to him, but now you're being abandoned. I feel bad for you guys. Upon hearing Li Salong's words, everyone turned to look at the two ladies. Even the Cold Moon Fairy was a little shocked. Red Moon, I made your senior sister fall in love with Brother Chu, so that she could cultivate the path of oblivion. I didn't make you do it too. Even you couldn't help feeling ashamed and indignant at this moment, loudly shouting, Nonsense, you're slandering me. Li Salong said. No one can cure the Crimson Ruler Serpent's poison. Whether it's slandering or not, you know best. Just because you can't cure it doesn't mean Brother Chu can't. Red Moon snorted. Enough. It's best if you two are related to Chu Kuangren. As for the rest, I don't have the time to listen to your arguments. The Sword Sovereign of Wind Cloud snorted. It was best if the two ladies were related to Chu Kuangren. That way, it would be more likely for him to come to the Seven Emotions sect. Spread the word that if Chu Kuangren doesn't show up tomorrow afternoon, we'll kill the Seven Emotions sect's maiden Lung Ningyu first. The Sword Sovereign of Wind Cloud took out a jade scroll and sent a message to the swordsman. Soon the news spread throughout the Emperor's path. The Seven Emotions sect's maiden Lung Ningyu and Chu Kuangren had always been a rumor. Especially now, when the Sword Sovereign of Wind Cloud wanted to kill Lung Ningyu to force Chu Kuangren out, it seemed to confirm the rumor. TSK, poor Saintess. She's going to die just like that. Why hasn't that D*Ned Chu Kuangren appeared yet? My poor maiden sage, I don't want her to die. This Chu Kuangren can't be a scumbag, can he? Even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. The Seven Emotions maiden sage is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. I can't believe she's been taken by Chu Kuangren. How many male cultivators have their hearts broken by this? The Seven Emotions sect is very lively right now. It would be a waste not to see such a scene. Why don't we go and take a look? The Seven Emotions sect was the well-deserved focus of the Emperor Road. He didn't know how many forces were eyeing him. There was even a large group of rogue cultivators heading towards the Seven Emotions sect. Time flew by. Soon the second day arrived. In front of the Seven Emotions clan's main hall, Lung Ningyu's cultivation was sealed. There was an invisible force field around her that trapped her like a cage. He was like a prisoner awaiting his execution. However, Lung Ningyu's expression was extremely calm. It was as if the person who was about to step on the road to hell wasn't her. On the other hand, Red Moon and the others who were not far away from her were extremely anxious. The Sword Emperor of Windcloud glanced at Lung Ningyu and said, "The Supreme Wangqing Dao is indeed extraordinary. Even at this point you can still remain so calm. Are you really not afraid of death?" "What's the point of being afraid? If it's useless, why should I be afraid?" Lung Ningyu said. "Well said. I'm starting to admire you now." The Sword Emperor of Windcloud's eyes were filled with admiration. At that moment, Li Salong walked up to her. "Ningyu, as long as you say that you're not related to Chu Kuangren, I'll ask the Poison Emperor to save you. What do you say?" Lung Ningyu looked at him and said coldly, "Aren't you the one who said that I'm related to Brother Chu? Now you want me to admit that I'm not related to Brother Chu? Don't you think that's ridiculous? Ningyu, are you really willing to die for Chu Kuangren?" Li Salong clenched his fists and said with bloodshot eyes. Lung Ningyu ignored him and did not even bother to look at him. She stood on the spot and stared at the Seven Emotions sect's mountain gate. "Lung Ningyu, I've liked you for so many years. I can't believe that you won't even look at me when you're at death's door." "Fine, fine." Li Salong had completely given up. He gritted his teeth and turned around. He looked at the people from the Seven Emotions sect and said coldly, "After you die, I'll do everything I can to take revenge on the Seven Emotions sect. I'll wreak havoc on the sect that you care about the most." The Poison Emperor looked at him and chuckled. "You're a healer, but you're so cruel. Kid, I'm starting to like you a little." Li Salong did not say anything. Being liked by the Poison Emperor was not a good thing. Who knew how he would torture him? If it were not for the heavenly oath, he would have been killed by the Poison Emperor in the cruelest way possible. It was almost noon. The Sword Emperor of Windcloud gathered sword chi on his fingertip and said to Lung Ningyu, "What are your last words?" Lung Ningyu looked at the mountain gate and Chu Kuangren's face appeared in her mind. For some reason she suddenly wanted to see him, but she would never see him again. "There's no need to say anything else. Let's do it," Lung Ningyu said. "Lady Yinghuang, please save senior sister." "Yes, Lady Yinghuang, please save the maiden sage." Not far away, Red Moon and the others were anxious. Yinghuang stood still with her fists clenched and her face extremely gloomy. She wanted to save her as well. That was the Seven Emotions sect's taboo. However, the emperors around her were all staring at her. Once she made a move, she would be attacked by the emperors. She would not be able to do anything against such a force. "If you're not going to save her, I'll do it." Red Moon gritted her teeth and dashed towards Lung Ningyu. She used all her strength to crash into the invisible force field. "Save the maiden sage. We can't just watch as the saintess dies." Under Red Moon's lead, some of the Seven Emotions sect's disciples stepped forward. However, Yinghuang and the Cold Moon deity's expressions changed. "A bunch of ants." The Poison Emperor snorted coldly and flicked his sleeves, sending out a gray mist that swept away Chiyu and the others one by one. Not only that, but the mist also contained a deadly poison that continuously invaded the disciples' bodies and corroded them. Soon, Red Moon and the others' faces turned black and blood flowed out of their orifices. "I don't think Chu Kuangren will show up anymore. Why don't we just destroy the Seven Emotions sect?" The Poison Emperor chuckled and activated his toxic plague evil physique. Poisonous mist continuously gushed out from his body, and wherever it went, countless disciples were poisoned and fell to the ground. Their faces turned black and they were on the verge of death. "Seven Emotions Maiden Sage, it's time to die." The Windcloud Sword Emperor condensed his sword chi at the tip of his finger and slashed at Lung Ningyu. The sword chi then formed into a giant sword shadow. Under the sword pressure, Lung Ningyu had nowhere to run. The sword shadow descended upon her, but she did not look at it. Instead, she looked outside the Seven Emotions sect's mountain gate. Perhaps her heart was also anticipating something. No. The cold moon deity and the others watched this scene with bloodshot eyes. Suddenly, the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor let out a soft gasp as a look of shock appeared on his face. His sword shadow was caught by a hand. Chapter 6:18. The sword shadow slashed down from the sky, carrying with it a bone-chilling sword pressure. No one below the Emperor realm could withstand that sword attack. Not to mention that Lung Ningyu's cultivation level was sealed, and sovereigns from the Seven Emotions sect like Ying Huang were being targeted by the other sovereigns. Lung Ningyu's death was almost certain. However, just as the sword shadow was about to slash down, a fair and slender palm with 10 fingers suddenly appeared out of thin air. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the palm easily caught the sword shadow in midair. "If you want to kill her, have you asked for my permission?" A cold voice rang out from the void. Then 2 figures walked out from the void. One of them was dressed in white, with waist-length black hair and a gorgeous longsword hanging from his waist. He grabbed the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign's sword shadow with one hand calmly. "Chu Kuangren. It's him. He's finally here." Everyone's expression changed. Red Moon, Cold Moon Deity, and the others were overjoyed. On the other hand, Li Salong was the complete opposite of them. He glared at Chu Kuangren, and the hatred in his eyes was so intense that it almost materialized. As for the sovereigns, most of them were curious as they sized up the person they wanted to kill despite meeting for the first time in their lives. The Grand Pope of Light and the Grand Pope of Darkness were aware of Chu Kuangren's strength, but their expressions were extremely solemn. "He's really here." Lung Ningyu stared at Chu Kuangren's back in a daze. She thought she was going to die, but she did not expect Chu Kuangren to save her once again like a deity descending from the heavens. This was the third time Chu Kuangren had saved her life. She would never be able to repay him in this lifetime. Crack. A cracking sound echoed in the air. Chu Kuangren clenched his fist, and the sword shadow that the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign unleashed was forcefully crushed, turning into smoke and dissipating. TSK, so you're Chu Kuangren? From the looks of it, it is indeed extraordinary." The Poison King said in amazement. Chu Kuangren glanced at him and then at the poisoned Red Moon and the others. He said, "Plague Evil Physique, interesting." He looked at the Poison Emperor as if he was looking at his prey. He was currently in need of research materials for the Book of Physiques. Wasn't this Supreme Taoist Poison Evil body just right? Being stared at by Chu Kuangren, the Poison Sovereign could not help but feel a chill run down his spine for some unknown reason. He muttered, "This kid is strange." As Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, a large amount of water vapor gathered and gradually enveloped Red Moon and the others. As the water vapor entered their bodies, the complexions of Qiyu and the others gradually improved as the poison in their bodies was expelled from their bodies. To be able to expel my poisonous qi, what a brilliant medical skill. It is not inferior to Mulongzi from back then. No, it is even more brilliant. The Poison Emperor said in shock. After curing everyone of the poison, Chu Kuangren pointed his finger at Lung Ningyu and broke the seal within her body. Then, with a wave of his hand, he tore apart the invisible force field around him. "Lan Yu, take her away first." Yes. Lan Yu grabbed Lung Ningyu and retreated to the front of Ying Huang and the others. The sovereigns around him did not stop Chu Kuangren either. Instead, they watched as he completed his task. After all, Chu Kuangren's appearance was their goal. As for the Seven Emotions sect and Lung Ningyu, they were just bait. "We finally meet again," the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor said as he looked at Chu Kuangren. His eyes were filled with a boiling killing intent. "This is not a good thing for all of you." "What do you mean?" "Now that you see me, there will inevitably be a fight, and the only ones who will die will be you. So this is not a good thing for all of you. You're so arrogant." "This is the truth." The sovereigns' expressions turned grim. They were a group of sovereigns who could easily intimidate an entire region, yet Chu Kuangren treated them like they were nothing. This person was far more arrogant than what they had heard. "Chu Kuangren, you really don't know what's good for you. Why don't you take a look at your current situation? The swordsman, demonic, Bai, and Qin clan sovereigns are all here. Even if you have 3 heads and 6 arms, you won't be able to escape death today." Li Salong said coldly to Chu Kuangren. So it's an ant like you." Chu Kuangren glanced at him and chuckled. He then casually unleashed a sword chi that tore through the void and headed towards his opponent. The Poison Emperor immediately dashed in front of his opponent and unleashed a palm attack. Activating his toxic plague evil physique, the horrifying palm chi collided with the sword chi. However, the sword chi slashed across the center of the Poison Emperor's palm, leaving a bloody wound on it. The Poison Emperor was forced to retreat. The remaining sword chi landed on Li Salong's body, severely injuring him on the spot. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground like a rag doll. Chu Kuangren. Li Salong lay on the ground, his body riddled with holes from the sword chi. He was like a pile of mud, unable to get up. All he could do was stare at Chu Kuangren with hatred. However, Chu Kuangren did not care at all. He was not in a hurry to kill Li Salong either. Instead he said, "Just lie there and watch how I kill all of you." He stood with his hands behind his back and glanced at the sovereigns. The sovereigns were also looking at him. From the various techniques that he had displayed since he appeared, especially when he forced the Poison Emperor to retreat with a single sword attack, it was obvious that his strength was no ordinary sovereigns. However, none of the sovereigns present here were easy to deal with. "He's here. Which one of you wants to attack?" His strength does seem to be very strong. Even I can't accurately sense his cultivation. However, we have already damaged the reputation of the orthodoxy by threatening the Seven Emotions sect. If we join forces to besiege a young junior, won't we become the laughingstock of the world? In my opinion, we should just pick 2 of us and kill him. The rest of us just have to make sure he doesn't escape. That makes sense. These sovereigns were all top-notch sky prides of their respective eras. Some were even forbidden sky prides, and they were all prideful figures back in the day. It was already very shameless of them to attack a young junior, but for the sake of their own sky prides, they had no choice but to do it. However, they could not bring themselves to gang up on Chu Kuangren now. Don't underestimate this person. Let's attack him together. The Grand Pope of Holy Light tried to persuade them. He knew how terrifying the person in front of him was. That's right. Let's gang up on him. The Dark Pontiff also said. The Dark Pope and the Light Pope were 2 incompatible factions that had a deep grudge against each other. Yet, they had the same opinion at that moment. This caused the emperors to be extremely shocked. Was Chu Kuangren really that terrifying? Listen to them. It's best if all of you attack together. Chu Kuangren glanced at the crowd and said, "Humph, I don't believe that a junior sky pride can be that strong. Back when I was dominating the world, I didn't even know where your ancestors were." And sovereign in a black and white Taoist robe snorted. He was the sovereign of the Yin-Yang sect. He took a step forward and attacked Chu Kuangren first. Between his palms, the power of Yin and Yang circulated. It was as if a majestic Taoist rhyme had fused with the emperor's qi that this sovereign had cultivated. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren raised his hand and punched. Boom! In an instant, an explosion was heard in the void, and a terrifying Taoist rhyme erupted. It almost condensed into mysterious Taoist patterns, and it was even accompanied by a horrifying phenomenon of the sun, and the moon flipping and the stars falling. It landed directly on the sovereign's palm. Amidst the explosion, the sovereign let out a scream. The power of Yin and Yang was instantly broken, and his entire arm exploded into a mist of blood. His entire body was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Chapter 619. With a single move, a martial emperor's arm exploded and he was sent flying. With a single move, an emperor was heavily injured. A single move had awed all the monarchs present. I told all of you to come at me together, but none of you believed me. Chu Kuangren retracted his arm and said indifferently. The Great Pontiff of the Light and Great Pontiff of the Dark Pontiff exchanged a glance and could not help but reveal a trace of horror in their eyes. Judging from Chu Kuangren's punch just now, they could sense that his strength had grown even more terrifying. It's only been a few days, how did his strength increase again? Damn it, isn't this guy a little too abnormal? The two popes gulped. One had to know that the other emperors might not even see any improvement even after thousands or tens of thousands of years. But Chu Kuangren could improve once every 2 to 3 days. Who the F***ck could stand this? It was too terrifying. Meanwhile, outside the Seven Emotions sect, the cultivators who were watching the battle were all dumbfounded. They were shocked by Chu Kuangren's punch, especially the group of young sky prides. Their faces were filled with confusion, severely injuring a top emperor with one punch. You're telling them that he's a genius just like them? Stop joking. Which clan's prodigy was this terrifying? Why is this guy so terrifying? This is a sky pride? Both this guy and I are geniuses? Are you kidding me? I feel like he can crush me with his toes. Monster. After a brief moment of silence, all the cultivators burst into an uproar. The sounds of discussion rose and fell. Some of the forbidden sky prides looked at Chu Kuangren in despair. How were they supposed to compete for the throne against someone like him? He must die here today. Otherwise, we won't stand a chance at all. One of the forbidden sky prides murmured as he stared at Chu Kuangren. The other taboos had similar thoughts. As long as Chu Kuangren did not die, they would not be able to compete with him for the throne. So powerful. The Sword of Wind and Cloud Emperor was the first to recover from the shock. His opponent's punch actually gave him a palpitating feeling, so he didn't dare to be careless and instantly unsheathed the ancient sword at his waist. The long sword was unsheathed, and a piercingly cold sword ray rushed towards Chu Kuangren. In terms of swordsmanship, can you beat me? Chu Kuangren chuckled. The descendant's self was unsheathed, and the purple sword light streaked across the sky. In the blink of an eye, 2 beams of sword light with terrifying sword-based Taoist rhymes erupted, causing the surrounding void to buzz and tremble. However, the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Monarch's expression changed drastically. He felt that his sword Taoist rhyme was being suppressed. Exquisite 9 Orifices Sword Heart. His Tao is already very close to the ultimate level, and with the exquisite 9 Orifices Sword Heart, he can actually suppress my ultimate Tao. The expression of the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor was extremely unsightly. 2 beams of sword light clashed continuously in the void. The 2 swords kept colliding in the void, and sword chi swept out, causing the ground around them to explode. Sword Winds and Clouds. The Sword Monarch of Wind and Cloud let out a deep roar and activated the quasi-monarch art that he had invented. With a boom, the wind and clouds gathered as the sword ray slashed towards Chu Kuangren. Heaven-rending drawing technique. Chu Kuangren let out a soft roar and slashed with his sword chi. The surging sword light poured down like a flood, and a terrifying aura that seemed to be able to destroy everything exploded. It directly tore apart Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud Sword Chi, and pushed him back nearly 100 meters, smashing into the wall of the palace. Divine radiance illuminates the world. Dark tide engulf. At that moment, the Great Dark Pope and the Great Light Pope behind Chu Kuangren attacked at the same time, unleashing their most powerful techniques. 1 white and 1 black, 1 light and 1 dark. 2 completely different energies erupted, turning into 2 terrifying torrents of energy that swept towards Chu Kuangren. The other emperors also attacked one after another. After witnessing Chu Kuangren's strength that heavily injured a top-notch emperor with a single punch, they no longer had the intention to fight him alone. They only had one thought in mind now. Let's go together and completely destroy this anomaly. That's more like it. Chu Kuangren laughed. Come, let me see how far the highest combat strength in the Emperor's path can push me. Accompanied by an extremely terrifying burst of Taoist rhyme, the 4 supreme Taoist physique strengths and Emperor's chi within Chu Kuangren's body surged out. 10,000 Taoist avatars were formed out of thin air. The 1,000-meter-tall avatar was overflowing with colorful lights, and surges of Taoist rhymes circulated within it. When it unleashed a punch, the 10,000 transcendental force, ferocious chi, battle intent, piercingly cold sword chi, and the supreme light force all converged at one point. The void suddenly exploded because of this surge of energy, and the entire space was instantly filled with cracks that quickly spread like a spider web. The light force and darkness force were the first to collide with this fist strength, but they instantly disintegrated and collapsed. The other emperor's techniques were also shattered one after another. The terrifying impact sent more than a dozen emperors flying. What kind of power is this? It's too terrifying. Oh my god, what kind of avatar is this? Why does it have so many Taoist physique energies, and all of them are supreme Taoist physiques? How can such a terrifying demonic existence exist in this era? The emperor's expressions changed drastically, as they were all shocked by the 10,000 transcendental avatars' power. It was not that they had never seen a supreme Taoist physique before, but it was definitely their first time seeing so many supreme Taoist physiques fused into one person's body. They had never even heard of such a thing before. If we don't kill this person today, we will never have a day of peace in the future, the Dark Pope said coldly. He took a step forward, and the surrounding spiritual power in the sky above Chu Kuangren converged towards him. With a pious look on his face, he chanted loudly, "O dark god above, let the dark tide devour the world." An even more terrifying dark tide formed, causing the sky to turn pitch black. It was as if everything within a 10,000-mile radius was plunged into darkness. The Light Pope did not back down either. He leaped into the air and chanted devoutly, "O God of light above, let the divine light shine upon the world." In the darkness, a dazzling white light suddenly bloomed. The white light continued to spread and gradually fought against the darkness. It was the same technique, but it was even more powerful. Two torrents of black and white rushed towards Chu Kuangren once again. Chu Kuangren no longer held back the Emperor's essence within his body. The power of the 9 surges of Emperor's essence erupted, causing a terrifying Emperor's aura to emanate from his body. The 10,000 transcendental avatar behind him also became more solid. With a punch, it forcefully shattered the 2 torrents of Emperor's aura. The 2 great popes immediately spat out blood and were sent flying. They looked at Chu Kuangren in horror. 9 surges of Emperor's essence. He has cultivated 9 surges of Emperor's essence. How is this possible? 9 surges of Emperor's essence was the limit that a cultivator below the Emperor realm could achieve. Even an emperor would need to spend countless years or even hundreds of thousands of years to achieve this level of cultivation. However, Chu Kuangren, a junior Sky Pride, had reached this level. Although the other emperors were shocked by Chu Kuangren's cultivation level, they did not stand still. They quickly followed the 2 great popes and attacked one after another. Great Luo Frost Palm. The Qin Emperor let out a low roar and unleashed a palm attack that contained the Emperor's essence, causing a monstrous chill to erupt. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and gathered the 4 divine primordial swords to shatter the frost palm attack. The 4 divine sword chi instantly blasted the Qin Emperor away with blood spewing out of his mouth. In the void, one rune after another suddenly appeared. They were formed by Xiao Fu Huang from the runic domain. Each rune contained an extremely powerful energy fluctuation. However, Chu Kuangren activated his mind power and destruction runes appeared out of thin air. The mysterious power of the runes instantly shattered the runes one by one. The demonic emperor mobilized his surging demonic qi and turned it into thousands of evil spirits. Chu Kuangren activated the Tathagata rebirth mantra, and the Buddhist light shone in all directions. Wherever it went, thousands of evil spirits would vanish into thin air. Apart from the 10,000 transcendental avatar, Chu Kuangren's various cultivation techniques dazzled the crowd. Chapter 620. Inside the 7 Emotions sect, a rare battle was taking place. As for the 2 sides of the battle, one side was the most powerful emperors in the Emperor's Road, while the other side was just a genius of the younger generation. Anyone who heard of such a disparity would scoff at it. What is this? A dozen emperors teaming up to fight a junior Sky Pride? How is this even possible? In fact, this ridiculous scene was playing out in front of all the cultivators of the 7 Emotions sect. Not only that, but the situation was developing in an unimaginable direction. Originally, the cultivators thought that with more than a dozen peerless emperors attacking at the same time, who in this world could not take them down? Such power was almost unparalleled in the Emperor's path. However, the truth was, a dozen emperors could not take down a junior Sky Pride. How do you guys know this guy? Inside the 7 Emotions sect's Grand Hall, Flesh Queen gulped in disbelief as she watched Chu Kuangren fight from the ground to the sky. Chu Kuangren was fighting a dozen sovereigns from the ground to the sky. Not only her, but the cold moon deity and the others were also in shock. It was just too terrifying. Not long ago, when Chu Kuangren went to the barren forbidden area, he was far from this level. How did he change so much after a trip to the barren forbidden area? It was as if he was a completely different person. High up in the sky, various types of energy exploded and Taoist rhymes appeared one after another. The entire sky was colorful and eye-catching. Everyone was trembling in fear. This was because they could feel the horrifying murderous intent hidden beneath that beautiful scene. It was an unstoppable force in the Emperor's path. Bone-rotting poison palm. Boom! The Poison Emperor and Chu Kuangren's palms collided. The bones in the Poison Emperor's arm exploded on the spot, but he was overjoyed. "Kid, I've finally caught you." In an instant, a horrifying poison chi gushed out from the Poison Emperor's body and instantly entered Chu Kuangren's body. Even an emperor would have a hard time surviving this poison chi. No matter how strong your cultivation base is, you won't be able to resist it. Is that so? Chu Kuangren smirked and held onto the Poison Emperor's arm tightly. Then he raised his hand and unleashed 2 more punches on his opponent's chest. The other party's body almost exploded under this force. However, Chu Kuangren had a firm grip on his arm, making it hard for him to break free. Seeing that his opponent was about to land another punch on him, the Poison Sovereign decisively let out a roar and channeled his spiritual power to break his arm before retreating. At the same time, the arm that Chu Kuangren was holding exploded on the spot, and a large amount of poisonous blood enveloped him. "Quick, he's poisoned." The Poison Emperor endured the pain of losing his arm and roared, "Chu Kuangren, die." One of the sovereigns took a step forward and unleashed a punch. A terrifying surge of lightning energy that seemed like it could destroy the world enveloped Chu Kuangren. Heaven and earth reversal. Similarly, Chu Kuangren threw out a punch. With a loud bang, the lightning on the monarch's fist shattered. His entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The terrifying fist force didn't diminish in the slightest as it flew towards the other sovereign realm cultivator, forcing him back several hundred meters. The group of emperors glared at the poison monarch. "With such terrifying power, you're telling me he's poisoned? What a joke." The poison monarch himself was a little confused. "That's impossible. He's been poisoned by my poisonous chi, and coupled with the effects of the poisonous blood, there's no way he can recover so quickly no matter how skilled he is. That's impossible." The poison monarch was in disbelief. His toxic plague evil physique had always been successful, and it had never disappointed him. How could it be defeated by Chu Kuangren? "What can the toxic plague evil physique do to me?" Chu Kuangren chuckled. The immortal body was already highly resistant to poison. On top of that, Chu Kuangren's physical body had undergone a series of good encounters, making it extremely tough. Even the toxic plague evil physique's poison could not do much to him. Not to mention that he was a top-notch healer. The toxic plague evil physique might be successful against others, but it was useless against him. "Alright, now show me your trump cards." Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, and a ray of lightning flew out and transformed into a guqin. He plucked the strings and played the 8 celestial demonic chords. It's musical Tao. How many other cultivation techniques does he know? D***, and that's an emperor weapon. Humph, does he think he's the only one with an emperor weapon? The emperors looked at each other and took out their respective emperor weapons. "Chu Kuangren, no matter what price we have to pay, we will kill you today," the great dark pontiff said coldly as he held a pitch-black longsword in his hand. "That's right. I will avenge the emperors of the radiant ancestral lands even if I have to join the Darkness Alliance." The great holy light pontiff held a white scepter in his hand, and his eyes were filled with hatred. A surge of cold sword Dao aura erupted. The ancient longsword in the hands of the Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud had streams of brilliance flowing around it. It actually shed its ancient appearance and turned into a colorful, crystal-like longsword. This was the true form of the ancient longsword. "Chu Kuangren, I must avenge the swordsman's taboo," the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor said coldly. "The Wang family will not sit idly by and watch you grow stronger." Rays of 5-colored light flowed around the emperor of the Wang family as the 5 elemental energies erupted. He waved a large flag in his hand. That was another monarch weapon of the Wang clan. Although Xiao Jingchen is the Bai family's son-in-law, he's a heavenly lord with a mysterious yellow body. He obtained the inheritance of a great emperor in the barren Forbidden Land, and had a great chance of ascending to the throne. However, because of you, all his hopes have been destroyed. The Bai family sovereign's eyes were also filled with hatred. He took out a long spear, which emanated a terrifying emperor's aura. "My demon race's taboo cannot die in vain." The demon emperor snorted coldly and took out a large seal. The word demon was engraved on the seal, and it was surging with the terrifying demon chi and emperor's might. Imperial weapons appeared in the void one after another. An incomparably surging emperor aura filled the space between heaven and earth. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He then pushed the Taoist rhyme on his body to its limit and channeled his emperor's chi into the spring thunder guqin. Very good. Emperors, use all your strength and let me enjoy myself to the fullest. Clang! Chu Kuangren plucked the guqin strings with his fingers, and the sound of the guqin reverberated throughout the realm. The first movement of the 8 demonic chords, boundless heaven and earth. The sound of the zither was the sound of war, pushing the battle to its climax. The emperors then activated the emperor's weapons in their hands. In an instant, the long swords unleashed sword chi. The long swords emitted a terrifying dark aura. The scepter glowed with a white light. The spear pierced through the air. The spear danced like a dragon, and demonic chi surged out of the large seal. The power of the various emperor's weapons collided with the Taoist rhyme of the zither. Everything within a radius of 10,000 kilometers shook violently. The void exploded and the ground shattered. The terrifying impact caused everything in the surroundings to be destroyed, as if it was the end of the world. The 7 emotions sect's sovereign's expression changed drastically. Activate the mountain barrier formation. A giant light barrier enveloped the 7 emotions sect, resisting the terrifying power that erupted from the collision of the emperor's weapons. In the distance, the cultivators were terrified. They either fled in panic or channeled their spiritual power to defend themselves. In an instant, it was as if doomsday had arrived. Chapter 621. In the void, the powers of the various emperor weapons collided in a frenzy. The heavens and earth exploded as energy surged in all directions. Chu Kuangren plucked the strings of the spring thunder guqin and played the 8 celestial demonic chords. Terrifying guqin music Taoist rhyme spread out boom boom. When the emperor's chi entered the emperor weapons, the power of the emperor weapons was unleashed to its fullest. Mysterious Taoist patterns even began to form in the void. Chu Kuangren fought against more than 10 emperor weapons with his guqin. His strength was indeed terrifying, but he was not completely unaffected under such circumstances. Under the impact of the emperor weapons, his physical body was under unimaginable pressure. If it were not for his incredibly strong physical body, he would have been crushed into a pile of minced meat. However, under such circumstances, his guqin music was still calm as the 8 celestial demonic chords reached its peak. Kacha! The jade crown on Chu Kuangren's head was shattered by the impact. His hair fell and danced in the wind like a demonic god. 7th movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords. Heavens and earth sync. The guqin music resounded and shook the heavens and earth. The surrounding emperors channeled their emperor weapons to fight against the guqin music. They did not expect Chu Kuangren to reach this level. That violent guqin music put them under a terrifying pressure. 8th movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords. Grand silent sound. The final song rang out. A soundless sound erupted and charged out with mysterious Taoist patterns. The power of the emperor weapons had also reached its peak. With this final powerful collision, a terrifying explosion was heard. The void was blasted apart, and all the emperors were blasted away. Puffed, puffed, puffed. The emperors were injured one after another, and clouds of blood mist exploded in the air. Chu Kuangren seized the opportunity. Once the descendant self-sword was activated, his figure turned into a phantom and flew into the crowd. Next, Chu Kuangren slashed at an emperor. Before the emperor could recover from the impact, he was met with Chu Kuangren's most ferocious counterattack. Before he could even react, his body was torn apart by the sword ray, and he died. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren's figure disappeared into the void and reappeared in front of another Emperor Realm cultivator. With the same sword strike, the Emperor Realm cultivator fell as well. Next. Third. With the descendant self-sword in his hand, Chu Kuangren's black hair danced wildly in the wind as his sword ray blossomed. It was as if the Grim Reaper had arrived to reap lives. In the blink of an eye, 6 Emperor Realm experts had perished on the spot. Terror appeared in the eyes of the remaining sovereigns, and they hurriedly activated their Taoist aura to seal the space. Then they charged towards Chu Kuangren once again. Dark God above, void shattering slash. The great dark pontiff roared and unleashed a slash at Chu Kuangren. Just a few days ago, the two of them were still wreaking havoc in the radiant ancestors' land. but now they were drawing their swords at each other, fighting to the death. Life was truly full of wonders. However, Chu Kuangren did not have the time to lament about this. Since they had attacked him, they were now his mortal enemies. There was no doubt about this. 10,000 Das. Chu Kuangren's avatar formed behind him, and the power of the four supreme Taoist physiques erupted, instantly shattering the great Dark Pontiff's sword ray and sending him flying again. Although the great Dark Pontiff had a strong cultivation base, he could no longer hold on after suffering so many injuries, and his combat strength was greatly reduced. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to follow up with another attack, a black figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a burly man with horns on his head, and his aura was extremely ferocious. He unleashed a punch that set off gusts of wind in the air. That was the Emperor of the Ox Demon clan. Cosmos Reversal. Chu Kuangren yelled and unleashed a punch of his own. With a loud explosion, the two fists instantly collided, and the huge impact set off an even more intense storm. Although the Emperor of the Ox Demon clan had a strong physical body, he could not help but scream under the terrifying power of the Cosmos Reversal. The bones in his arm were broken, and the white bone on his elbow pierced through his flesh. He was drenched in blood as he was sent flying. Divine radiance illuminates the world. Wind Cloud Slash. 5 elements capturing technique. The Holy Light Pontiff, the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor, and the Wang clan's Emperor attacked again, and several terrifying surges of energy surged towards Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren stood proudly in the air as Taoist rhymes gathered around him, almost forming solid Taoist patterns. He clapped his palms together, and 2 vortexes appeared in the middle of his palms, completely devouring the surges of energy. Heaven Vortex. The Heaven Vortex dispelled the Great Dark Pontiff's attacks. The 10,000 avatar was not idle either. They too unleashed a punch, and the combined power of the 4 supreme Taoist physiques erupted. The emperors were instantly blasted away. Sky-piercing demonic flame. The Emperor of the Demon clan let out an angry roar and tossed the Great Seal in his hand into the air. The Great Seal suddenly burned with black hellfire, and with an extremely majestic impact, it came crashing down on Chu Kuangren. For Divine Primordial Sword, Chu Kuangren unleashed his supreme divine technique again. The 4 sword shadows soared into the sky and landed on the Great Seal, and the hellfire on it gradually disintegrated under the impact of the 4 divine powers. Then the 10,000 avatar unleashed a punch on the Great Seal and sent it flying. Amidst the explosion, the Great Seal was sent flying and smashed onto the Emperor of the Demon clan. The Emperor of the Demon clan was smashed into a mountain range along with the seal, causing dust to rise everywhere. In the distance, many people watched the battle with drool in their mouths. Of the dozen or so emperors who attacked, Chu Kuangren had already killed nearly half of them, and the rest were suppressed by him. This kind of scene was too sensational. How can this be? Is this person really that invincible? This is too scary. Oh my god, is Chu Kuangren on drugs or something? Is he really that powerful? If this goes on, he'll kill all the emperors. The crowd was in disbelief. With more than a dozen top-notch emperors attacking, it should be an unparalleled force that could sweep through the emperor's path. But right now, it was a genius of the younger generation who was being suppressed to death. The unparalleled emperors had encountered an even more unparalleled existence. Rune's God's Domain. At that moment, a sudden roar came from the void. Xiao Fu Huang from the land of runes let out a roar. Lines of mysterious runic patterns quickly spread out with him as the center, turning into a giant rune that covered a 10-kilometer radius. Chu Kuangren suddenly felt a great pressure on his body. Whether it was his spiritual power, Emperor's Qi, or his Taoist Tao, he could not unleash his full power. Oh, what an interesting rune. He was slightly surprised. The Myriad Talisman catalog did not record such a rune. Is this a hidden technique of the Land of Runes? The Myriad Talisman catalog that he had was only a copy of it. The core runes were not recorded in the Myriad Talisman catalog. Xiao Fu Huang's Taoist talisman was probably one of them. Destruction Rune. Chu Kuangren activated the Destruction Rune in an attempt to destroy this rune. However, the Destruction Rune, which had always been effective against runes, was ineffective against this rune. It's no use. Your Destruction Rune is indeed mysterious and mysterious, But my God's trapping domain rune is also mysterious. With my power, no matter how strong you are, you'll still be suppressed. Now accept your death obediently. Xiao Fu Huang said coldly. That Taoist talisman was his trump card. He would not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. However, when he used it, he could often turn the tide. He believed that this time would not be an exception. Chapter 622. Once the God-confining domain talisman appeared, the mysterious power of the runes instantly enveloped Chu Kuangren, suppressing his spiritual power and cultivation base. Even the power of his Taoist Tao was greatly reduced. Everyone, this talisman has consumed too much of my energy. I'll leave him to you guys for now. Xiao Fu Huang said to the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign and the others. Don't worry, Xiao Fu Huang. I'll kill him today. Kill him. Chu Kuangren, you must die today. The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign and the others charged forward again. Chu Kuangren, who was suppressed by the God-confining domain talisman, was no longer as powerful as before. Under the violent attacks of the emperors with emperor weapons, he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Wind Cloud Sword Slash. Divine radiance illuminates the world. Several attacks were unleashed, and Chu Kuangren was blasted away. However, his physical body was too strong. Even if his spiritual power, Taoist Tao, and Emperor's Qi were all suppressed by the God-confining domain talisman, his powerful physical body still gave him unparalleled combat strength. Although he was at a disadvantage, he did not show any signs of losing. The more the emperors fought, the more frightened they became. At this stage, he still has no signs of losing. Just how terrifying was this guy? Is he even human? We can't let this go on. Xiao Fu Huang's God-confining domain talisman won't last long. If we don't take this opportunity to kill him, we won't have another chance when this talisman disappears. The Grand Pope of Radiance had a determined look in his eyes. Suddenly, a surge of divine radiant flame appeared on his body, and he chanted piously, O God of Radiance, your humble servant is here with the divine flame, begging for your arrival. The Grand Pope of Radiance did not hesitate to sacrifice his lifespan to summon a god. Suddenly, surges of divine radiant flame spread out from the Grand Pope's body like a tidal wave, igniting the void. Amidst the endless divine flames, an illusory figure appeared. Its golden eyes swept across the battlefield, and its terrifying aura shocked everyone. Is that a god? It's the divine radiant god. Does the Radiant Church really have a god? How terrifying. The Radiant Church can really summon the power of a god. Don't stop me, I want to join them. When some cultivators saw the radiant god, they instinctively felt a sense of reverence and couldn't help but want to worship him. Some of them even knelt down in the direction of the god of light and praised the miracle, as if they had become devout believers in an instant. On the other side, the Dark Pope gnashed his teeth. You've already done so much. If I still don't make a move, it won't make sense. A powerful dark aura erupted from his body as he chanted devoutly, God of darkness above, your lowly believer. The terrifying power of darkness spread out, and a huge black abyss suddenly appeared in the void. A majestic black figure slowly walked out of it. It was dark and deep, as if there was no light at all, only his eyes were as bright as the stars. A divine power that was not inferior to the God of light poured out from the figure. It was the God of darkness that the Thule society believed in. The wills of the two great gods appeared in the world, shaking the heavens. The surrounding cultivators were all shocked by the vast divine aura. Some of them whose Tao hearts were unstable knelt on the spot and kowtowed. The emperors were also a little fearful. The techniques of these two religions are indeed extraordinary. Is this the God that they're talking about? I wonder who's stronger compared to the rumored emperors. As ancient orthodoxies, these emperors had some understanding of the gods, so they did not worship them as much as the others. What they were in awe of was the other party's power. The two gods each stood on one side. The two forces of light and darkness met in the void, resisting each other as equals. The moment the gods' eyes met, they were about to attack each other. The forces of light and darkness could not merge. It was not only the beliefs of the two religions, but also the relationship between the two gods. The moment they met, they were about to fight each other. They both thought that they were summoned to fight each other. When the two great popes saw that, their expressions changed, and they quickly stopped them. My God, the heretic is over there. The great Pope pointed at Chu Kuangren and said, if they were to fight, they would become a laughingstock. Oh, it's you. The divine light god glanced at Chu Kuangren and sensed that the other party's aura was the same one that had shattered his will clone in the past. At that thought, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Meanwhile, the divine light god looked at Chu Kuangren with a deep gaze. I can't believe there's a day where I'll join forces with the divine light god. This is unbelievable. However, their will doppelgangers were summoned to help the two supreme pontiffs eliminate their enemies. As for who their enemies were and who they were working with, it was not that important. Heretic slay. The divine light god pointed a finger at Chu Kuangren. The divine light god also unleashed a black torrent. The joint attack of the consciousness clones of the two gods was so powerful that none of the sovereigns present could withstand it. Even Chu Kuangren could not help but be sent flying hundreds of feet away. Even his incredibly tough body could not help but suffer some damage. The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor, the Demonic Emperor, and the others also attacked one after another. Sword Chi, Saber Rays, and many other things were unleashed, wanting to kill Chu Kuangren. In the distance, Lung Ningyu, Red Moon, Lan Yu, and the others in the Seven Emotions sect watched with their hearts in their throats. Heavenly Reversal. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and unleashed an invincible technique, but he was still pushed back. He had fallen into a disadvantageous position. The surrounding cultivators were almost certain of the outcome. Heretic, I'll kill you with my next move. The divine light god said indifferently as his boundless divine aura slammed into the void like a tidal wave. The divine light god also raised his hand and a terrifying dark energy gathered. With the god confinement talisman and the two gods joining forces, the surrounding emperors were also gathering their strength and preparing to attack. Chu Kuangren seemed to be in a desperate situation. However, at that moment he suddenly let out a long roar. Gods? Do you think you're worthy of being called gods? Do you think you're worthy of taking my life? As he roared, Chu Kuangren's aura began to rise, and a terrifying Taoist rhyme emanated from his body. All the emperors could not help but narrow their eyes. This aura. It's the ultimate Tao. He's broken through. His Tao has reached the ultimate Tao. The emperor's expressions changed. The ultimate Tao was the highest level before the emperor Tao, just like how those below the emperor realm could only gather 9 surges of emperor's chi. The ultimate Tao was the highest realm anyone below the emperor realm could reach. Haha, emperors, thank you very much. If it weren't for your continuous suppression, it would have taken me a long time to reach the ultimate Tao, Chu Kuangren said with a laugh. His Tao had already reached the peak of the Great Perfection realm, and he was only half a step away from stepping into the ultimate realm. Now, under the siege of the emperors and the collision of Taos, his Tao had finally reached the ultimate realm. The emperors were even more shocked when they heard what he said. Chu Kuangren was using them to hone his Tao, sharpen his own Tao in battle. Facing the siege of more than 10 emperors, he still had the ability to do such a thing. Did the other party even put them in his eyes? Chapter 623. Within the God Confinement Talisman, Chu Kuangren's aura continued to rise. In the battle against the dozens of emperors, he continued to polish his Tao, and finally, he had taken the final step. His Tao of invincibility had reached its peak. How terrifying was the ultimate Tao of invincibility! Chu Kuangren's every move, even if it was just a gentle lift of his hand, had a horrifying power that could crush all living beings and overturn the sun and moon. The God Confinement Talisman shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Xiao Fu Huang let out a low growl and channeled the spiritual power and Emperor's Qi in his body to its limit to barely maintain it. You won't be able to maintain this talisman. Chu Kuangren chuckled. I'll show you my talisman. He raised his hand and gathered the spiritual Qi from the heavens and earth. Suddenly, countless colorful patterns formed in the void and turned into a huge talisman. The runes swirled and contained a mysterious Taoist rhyme. It vaguely reflected natural phenomena such as mountains, rivers, the sun, and the moon. What? What talisman is this? Xiao Fu Huang's expression changed. Even with his mastery in talisman Tao, he could not recognize this rune. It was a rune that he had never seen or heard of before. Heavenly 9 Dragons Transformation. Chu Kuangren growled and immediately used the legendary rune that he had obtained not long ago. The colorful runes in the void gathered the spiritual qi from the heavens and earth and turned into 9 ferocious and domineering colorful dragons. The 9 dragons, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, and white, circled around Chu Kuangren and let out thunderous roars. The dragon poise resounded across tens of thousands of kilometers, shaking the sun, moon, and stars. Even the divine poise could not overshadow it. This rune can turn spiritual qi into dragon qi. Shao Talisman Emperor gasped. At that moment, something even more shocking happened. The 9 dragons flew towards Chu Kuangren, and the majestic dragon qi surged into his body, causing his aura to skyrocket again. If what he had experienced before was the improvement of his Tao, then what he was experiencing now was the sublimation of his cultivation and spiritual energy. How strong was Chu Kuangren's cultivation base? Having condensed 9 surges of Emperor's qi, Chu Kuangren was already at the top of the Emperor's, enough to sweep through the Emperor's path. However, now that the 9 streams of dragon qi had entered his body, the 9 streams of Emperor qi were raging, and the supreme foundation in his body shone with boundless divine light. In addition to the 9 wisps of Emperor qi, there were also 9 wisps of dragon qi. Moreover, the power of these 9 surges of dragon essence was no weaker than the 9 surges of Emperor's essence. In other words, Chu Kuangren now had the equivalent of 18 surges of Emperor's essence within his body. Although it was only temporary, it was terrifying enough. As Chu Kuangren's aura skyrocketed, the God Confinement Talisman could no longer hold on and exploded. Xiao Fu Huang suffered a backlash on the spot when the talisman markings were destroyed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he was blasted flying before lying on the ground weakly. Without the suppression of the God Confining Talisman, Chu Kuangren was no longer restrained. His spiritual power, cultivation base, and Taoist aura of extreme Taoism filled the entire realm. The entire world was shaking. God, are you ready to be beaten up by me again? Chu Kuangren's gaze was like lightning as he stared at the divine light deity. He took a step forward, and the power of the supreme body of the way erupted. 10,000 Dharma forms condensed, and the power of the 9 emperors and 9 dragons was added to it. The Dharma form raised its hand and unleashed a punch, and the void instantly exploded. The divine light god coldly shot out a beam of light, but the terrifying fist energy instantly shattered the beam of light. The punch landed on his body, causing cracks to form on his body, and soon his body was covered with cracks. Heretic, you've successfully provoked my wrath. I hereby swear that one day, I'll let you have a taste of the divine punishment. The divine light god's tone was extremely cold. Divine punishment? Even the heavenly punishment can't do anything to me. So what can your divine punishment do to me? Chu Kuangren sneered. His Dharma form unleashed another punch. This time it was infused with the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme. The majestic heavenly might directly overpowered the so-called divine might. The moment the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme appeared, the expressions of the 2 deities changed drastically. Heavenly punishment? You're a heavenly executioner. Impossible. The 2 deities looked as if they had seen something unbelievable. However, before they could say anything, the myriad Dharma form's energy had already landed on the divine light god's body, forcefully blowing him up. Most of the remaining fist energy continued forward and landed on the divine light god's body, shattering him into pieces. Before he completely dissipated, he stared at Chu Kuangren with a vague fear in his eyes. How could a proud deity show fear towards a human? That was something that the Great Pope of Darkness and the Great Pope of Light could not believe. It was even more shocking than when Chu Kuangren destroyed the deity's shadow. Heavenly executioner? What does that mean? Chu Kuangren frowned. Could this heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme have some other meaning that he did not know? Who are you? The Great Pope of Darkness stared at Chu Kuangren and asked. Me? I'm just an ordinary cultivator. Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a lift of his hand, the myriad Dharma forms grabbed the Great Pope of Darkness. The latter could not resist at all and was instantly caught by the Dharma form's giant palm. With a crack, he was crushed into a pile of meat. His other hand slapped towards the Great Pope of Light. The Great Pope of Light channeled all his energy to resist, but it was futile. With a loud explosion, The strongest pope of the Divine Radiant Church was slapped to death by Chu Kuangren like a fly. That's too cruel. The rest of the spectators felt their hearts tremble. Killing an emperor was like killing a fly. Moreover, that was the great pope of the Divine Radiant Church. Was there anything more terrifying than that? Run! The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor, the Wangs, and the others had long lost their will to fight after witnessing that scene. They turned into streams of light and fled. Running away now would be a little too stupid. Chu Kuangren said calmly. Suddenly, countless runic lights circulated between the heavens and the earth. Tens of thousands of runes hovered in the void, blocking the path of the emperors one by one. When did this happen? There's no way he could have arranged such a large amount of runic energy in one go. He's been preventing us from escaping since the beginning. The emperors were shocked. What did that mean? It meant that Chu Kuangren had long since won this battle. They were the only ones who thought that they would win. Now that they thought about it, it was too ironic that they did not know that they were already someone else's prey. They even called themselves the Hunters. For Divine Primordial Sword, Raging God's Fist, Chu Kuangren raised his hand and activated all sorts of divine abilities and emperor techniques. With his current strength of the 9 emperors of the 9 dragons and the ultimate Tao of invincibility, even the most basic attack could kill an emperor. Using these cultivation arts was even more terrifying. Mysterious Tao patterns gathered in the void like a giant net, trapping all the sovereigns within. With the addition of the seal of the runes, the sovereigns had no way to escape. It was originally a battle against Chu Kuangren, but now it had turned into a one-sided massacre by Chu Kuangren against the emperors. The spectating cultivators from afar could not describe the scene in front of them. They were overwhelmed with emotions, but they were speechless. Chu Kuangren is truly invincible. One of the cultivators gulped and said with a trembling voice, "Invincible? Who dared to say they were invincible? Who dared to say they were invincible?" In the Emperor's path, no Sky Pride had ever dared to call themselves invincible. But now they had seen a truly invincible person. At least, no one below the Emperor realm could defeat him. Chapter 624. Cough cough. You're an anomaly. You really are an anomaly. The Poison Emperor was choked by Chu Kuangren and could not stop coughing. Among the emperors present, he was the only one left. The pestilence evil physique is a good research material. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He clenched his fist and a surge of spiritual power gushed out, crushing his opponent's heart. By killing him, this supreme Taoist physique could be preserved in its most complete form so that Chu Kuangren could study it more easily. He then tossed his opponent's corpse into his yin and yang ring. Then he used his mind power to collect the other people's yin and yang rings and emperor weapons. This battle could be considered to have come to an end. Just as Chu Kuangren was about to leave, he suddenly saw Li Salong, who was lying on the ground pretending to be dead. He walked up to him. He smirked. "You're not dead yet?" The energy fluctuations from the battle between him and the emperors were terrifying. Yet Li Salong was lying there unscathed despite being heavily injured. Chu Kuangren was surprised by his luck. Upon hearing Chu Kuangren's voice, Li Salong's body trembled violently, and his eyes were filled with extreme fear. "Chu Kuangren, please let me go. I won't dare to go against you anymore. Just treat me like a fart and let me go. Please, I beg you," Li Salong said while weeping. He was afraid. He had witnessed everything. He saw Chu Kuangren's almost invincible figure, and he could only lie there like a pile of mud. The gap between them was so huge that it made him despair. Even if he gave it his all, he would not be able to hurt Chu Kuangren. "Let you go. You'll have to ask the others if they'll let you go." Chu Kuangren glanced at the 7 emotions sect's disciples beside him. They stared at each other with hatred in their eyes. "Brother Chu, you don't have to trouble yourself. Leave him to us," one of the 7 emotions sect's disciples sneered. "All right." Chu Kuangren did not refuse. After he left, the group of 7 emotions sect's disciples walked up to Li Salong and kicked him mercilessly. "You think you're worthy of the maiden sage? Why don't you take a good look at yourself first? You're a toad lusting after a swan. You want to cause chaos in the 7 emotions sect, right? Come on. You even brought the Poison Emperor to kill us? You're pretty awesome. Soon, under the trampling of the disciples of the Seven Emotions sect, Li Salong died with endless grievances. In the main hall of the Seven Emotions sect, when Chu Kuangren walked in, Ing Huang hurriedly brought some people to welcome him. Brother Chu has resolved this crisis for my Seven Emotions sect. The Seven Emotions sect is very grateful. Ing Huang cupped her hands and said respectfully. She glanced at Chu Kuangren. Aside from the disheveled hair, the other party's white robes remained the same, and the aura on his body gradually stabilized, without the slightest hint of disorder. After fighting a few emperor warriors, he was not injured at all. The scene caused Ing Huang to be even more shocked. This person was simply a monster. Thinking of this, she could not help but feel even more awe. Chu Kuangren glanced at her and said, "This time, the Seven Emotions sect has suffered because of me. You don't have to be so courteous. You can't blame fellow Taoist Chu for this. Who would have thought that the people of the sword race would be so shameless to actually use such a method to force you?" They chatted for a while. After that, Chu Kuangren decided to temporarily stay in the Seven Emotions sect for a few days. After the battle, his Tao had reached its peak. However, it was a little rushed to break through in the midst of battle, so he needed some time to stabilize it. Besides that, he also wanted to study the Poison Emperor's plague evil physique. While Chu Kuangren was staying in the Seven Emotions sect, the news that he had single-handedly killed more than 10 top martial emperors had spread throughout the entire Emperor's Road, and countless people were horrified by it. The sky prides from the other factions were even more overshadowed. In this era they had completely become Chu Kuangren's background, living in his shadow. After that battle, Chu Kuangren had completely established his position in the Emperor's Road. Whether it was the forbidden sky prides or the emperors of the ancient orthodoxies, as long as they were not emperors, almost no one dared to provoke him. Inside the Seven Emotions sect, Chu Kuangren was sitting cross-legged in a room. He was stabilizing his Tao. After the battle with the emperor warriors, his Tao had reached its peak. The next step was to prove his Tao and become an emperor. Most of the martial monarchs had ascended to the martial monarch realm on Mount Monarch, and borrowed the force of the heavenly Tao to achieve the martial monarch realm. Rumor had it that there were some emperors who did not need to ascend the emperor's mountain or borrow the power of the heavenly Tao. Instead, they relied on their own understanding and cultivation to prove their Tao. This method of proving one's Tao was known as using strength. However, no one knew how to do it. Throughout the ages, there were too few people who had used strength to become emperors. Moreover, everyone's method was different and unpredictable. Some people meditated under a tree for 3 days and 3 nights, and when the sun rose, they became emperors. Some people fished by the river for more than 100 years, and finally caught a golden water dragon. They rode on the dragon and became emperors. There was also a scholar who had no cultivation base but read all 3,000 Taoist scrolls. When he finally cultivated, he became an emperor. In less than 100 years, he somehow became an emperor. However, no matter which example it was, every person who used strength to become an emperor had a terrifying foundation before they became an emperor. They were invincible among their peers, and they could even fight against emperors. After becoming an emperor, they became the best among the emperors. Using strength to prove one's Tao. Perhaps this is one way. Chu Kuangren opened his eyes and murmured. However, he was still lacking in knowledge in this area. He planned to borrow the Seven Emotions Sect's foundation to look up information on this. He was not in a hurry. After stabilizing his Tao, he took out the Poison Emperor's corpse and studied the mysteries of the Taoist physiques. The process was very smooth. Although the Poison Emperor was dead, his Taoist physique was still there. After some research, Chu Kuangren soon mastered it. Since then, Chu Kuangren had 5 supreme Taoist physiques. When should I call the Mystic Sword Guard over? She has the Fallen Darkness physique, which is also a supreme Taoist physique. Don't waste it. Nangong Huang's Yinyang Godai and Murong Xian's Crimson Sun physique are also supreme Taoist physiques. By the way, after Shang Qingshua's fortuitous encounter at Skylake Mountain, her Frost physique has also been upgraded to a supreme Taoist physique. Chu Kuangren thought about the Taoist physiques around him. If he could understand all of them, it would be of great help to him. Needless to say, the power of the 10,000 Taoist avatars would definitely increase. After carefully thinking about what he had to do in the future, Chu Kuangren came out of his closed-door meditation. The first thing he did was to borrow the Seven Emotions sect's library, wanting to read up on the Taoist path through strength. The Seven Emotions sect did not reject his request. They generously opened up the library for him to read. As an ancient orthodoxy, the Seven Emotions sect had a deep heritage. The scriptures in the sect were countless, covering all aspects. Among them, there were many about the Taoist path through strength. However, after some reading, the conclusion he obtained made Chu Kuangren frown. According to the scriptures, the Taoist path through strength mostly happened in ancient times when the Taoist path was at its peak. It had not happened since the ancient times, and in recent times, there was not even an emperor, let alone the Taoist path through strength. In other words, to achieve the Taoist path through strength, one must be in an era when the Taoist path was at its peak, and the probability of that happening was very small. As for the Dharma-ending era, it was impossible. Unfortunately, although this era was the era of great battles, the Taoist path manifestation had only just begun a few years ago. It was in the transitional stage between the Dharma-ending era and the Taoist path prosperity era, and even the emperors had not officially been born yet. It was almost impossible to achieve the Taoist path through strength under such circumstances. What a coincidence! What I like to do the most is to challenge the impossible. Chu Kuangren closed the book and smiled faintly. Chapter 625. After learning about how to prove one's Tao through strength, Chu Kuangren was already thinking about how to walk this path. Since ancient times, those who had proven their Tao through strength were all people with extremely strong foundations. They were invincible among those in the same realm. Chu Kuangren's foundation was already very strong. With 9 strands of Emperor Qi and the ultimate Tao, almost no sovereign was a match for him. However, he was not sure if this was enough to prove his Tao through strength. He wanted to continue accumulating. To do that, he needed resources. There aren't any great opportunities of fortune in the Emperor Road for now. It's not easy to find resources. Chu Kuangren scanned his yin and yang rings with his spiritual thoughts. He had more or less obtained some resources from killing a group of sovereigns. However, those were far from enough. It was not even as much as his trip to the Forbidden Barren Wasteland. Forbidden Barren Wasteland? Did he have to make another trip to the Forbidden Barren Wasteland? However, other than the core area, there were no great opportunities of fortune in the rest of the areas. Do I have to wait for the Emperor Mountain to open and become an emperor there? Chu Kuangren thought to himself. Proving one's Tao through strength was one way. After becoming an emperor, one's combat strength would be the strongest. However, if it did not work out, he would not be too stubborn. Becoming an emperor at the Emperor Mountain was another way as well. He just had one more choice compared to the others. However, the Emperor Mountain had not opened yet. He wanted to try proving his Tao through strength and see if he could succeed. Resources, I've got it. Chu Kuangren suddenly remembered the ancestral land foundation he had obtained when he wreaked havoc in the holy ancestral land. That ancestral land foundation was not inferior to treasures like the primeval Taoist gem. Was that not a ready-made resource? Sword tribe, Wang clan by clan, demonic tribe. These forces wanted to kill him. He could not just pretend that nothing had happened. If he did, he would not be Chu Kuangren anymore. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Sword tribe, demonic tribe by clan, Wang clan. It's time for us to settle our debts. Chu Kuangren grinned. Beside him, Lan Yu saw Chu Kuangren smile and could not help but sigh. These forces were unlucky. However, she did not have any sympathy or pity. This was the result of offending the young master. Oh, by the way, Lan Yu, I got this from the Holy Light's chief sovereign. There are some Holy Light attribute treasures inside, as well as his insights into the Holy Light Tao. There's also an Emperor weapon inside which should be helpful to you. Chu Kuangren took out a yin and yang ring and handed it to Lan Yu. Lan Yu took it. Thank you, young master. And back then, I even gave you the foundation stone of the radiant ancestral land, right? Right now, your cultivation is nearing the bottleneck. I alone am enough to deal with the sword tribe. You should go into seclusion for a while. All right. After that, Lan Yu parted ways with Chu Kuangren for the time being and headed to the place where Nan Gonghuang and the others were in closed-door meditation to improve themselves. Sword race. Ever since the sword tribe leader found out about the battle at the Seven Emotions sect, He had completely lost the courage to go against Chu Kuangren. He still could not understand why such a terrifying sky pride like Chu Kuangren would appear in this world. An anomaly, an anomaly. The sword tribe leader looked up at the sky and sighed. He stood at the edge of a cliff and looked down at the vast sword race territory below. There were many talented people in this territory, and their sword chi filled the sky. However, he did not feel happy at all. Now that the sword tribe had lost their taboo, they had lost their top-notch sky pride. They had lost the right to compete for this era's emperor's throne. Looks like this era's emperor's throne is definitely yours. However, do you really think you can sit back and relax after becoming an emperor? The true strength of the sword tribe is the emperors. The emperors can't interfere with the affairs of those below the emperor realm. However, once you become an emperor, do you really think the sword tribe's emperors, Wang clan's emperors, and the others will let you go so easily? The sword tribe leader muttered. He had given up on the idea of going against Chu Kuangren, but that did not mean he did not hate him anymore. On the contrary, he hated him to the core. However, he could no longer exact his revenge. He could only pin his hopes on the emperors. Chu Kuangren, let's see how long you can stay in your glory. The sword tribe leader snorted and was about to leave the cliff. However, the long sword at his waist suddenly began to vibrate uncontrollably. What's going on? The sword tribe leader was shocked. Soon he realized that he was not the only one. Every swordsman in the sword tribe had their swords vibrated uncontrollably. What's going on? Why are my swords vibrating? It's as if these swords are afraid of something. By the heavens, what does this mean? For a moment, the entire sword tribe fell into an inexplicable panic. At that moment, some of the swordsmen seemed to have noticed something. Their eyes widened as they looked into the distance. From afar, a figure was slowly walking towards the sword tribe's territory. That person was dressed in white and had black hair. He was extremely handsome and looked like a celestial being. What shocked the sword tribe even more was that the closer this person got to the sword tribe's territory, the more their swords vibrated. An uncontrollable sense of panic spread in every swordsman's heart. This was because they had already guessed the identity of this person. The only thing that can resonate with countless swords in this world is the exquisite 9 orifices sword heart. After the Taoist's death, there's only one exquisite 9 orifices sword heart left in this world, and that's Chu Kuangren. There's no other person besides Chu Kuangren who possesses such sword Tao. What's this person doing in the sword tribe? Gulp. Don't tell me he's here as a guest. Don't just stand there. Quick. Activate the sword tribe's great formation. One of the sword tribe elders yelled. Everyone in the Emperor Road knew about the feud between the sword tribe and Chu Kuangren. Now that he had suddenly come to the sword tribe, no one would think that he was just here as a guest. Moreover, the sense of panic emanating from the swords in their hands made it more likely that he was here to seek revenge. Facing Chu Kuangren, no one dared to be careless. They had a hunch. The sword tribe's great calamity was coming. Whoosh! A sword ray swept down from the cliff and landed in front of everyone. It stared at Chu Kuangren, who was slowly walking towards them from afar. Everyone be on guard! The sword tribe leader yelled. At that moment, the sword tribe's great defensive formation had been activated. Surges of sword chi leaped out from the sword tribe's territory and intertwined in the void, covering the sword tribe's territory like an inverted bowl. The surrounding vegetation was reduced to ashes in front of this great formation. Chu Kuangren remained calm at the sight. His footsteps did not stop. He was still walking at a steady pace, as if he was here for a vacation. There was no sign of hostility or seriousness on his face. However, as he approached, all of the sword tribe's swordsmen felt an extremely terrifying pressure enveloping them. It was not only a physical pressure but also a psychological one. When Chu Kuangren arrived before the mega formation, he stopped in his tracks and looked at the sword tribe leader inside the formation. He said, "Sword tribe leader, we've finally met officially. What exactly do you want to do this time?" The sword tribe leader stared at Chu Kuangren and asked coldly. "It's simple. Apologize to me.